Chapter 1282. Chanyang Qingyun's defeat was a great blow to the morale of the people of Chanyang Prefecture. Chanyang Qingyunfeng, Chanyang Qingjuri, Chanyang Yuan Wuji, and Chanyang Yuan Jinghua all paled as they watched from afar. At that moment, the four of them felt like the world was spinning around them, as if it was about to collapse. Chanyang Qingyun is the greatest expert of Chanyang Prefecture, yet even he's not the heavenly enchantress opponent. He can't even last 3 moves against her. She's just too terrifying. She's not a saint ruler at all, Chanyang Qingyunfeng thought to himself. Chanyang Qingyunfeng thought. He was extremely shocked. The supreme strength the heavenly enchantress had displayed was enough to make them despair. The deathly silence lasted for a while before it was finally broken. The Grand Elder of Mercenary City exhaled deeply and loudly said, "Why don't we end the enmity between Shangwan Mu'er and the people of Chanyang Prefecture here? Everyone, the battle has ended. Please return to the miniature world of Mercenary City and continue the meeting." With that, the experts of the Holy Emperor gathered there all returned. The heavenly enchantress did not say anything either, returning to the miniature world with everyone with her simple zither. In the end, only the 5 great elders of Chanyang Prefecture remained. They all stood there in dejection. "Sigh, let's go as well." Chanyang Yuan Jinghua only sighed at the sky after quite a while. He turned around and left. What had happened today was no different from a slap to the face of the Protector clan of Chanyang Prefecture. Not only had they been humiliated, but it had also been a great humiliation to them. Chanyang Qingyun returned to his senses at this moment. Thinking about how he had boasted that he would teach the heavenly enchantress a lesson, he felt his face burn. He was tempted to find a hole to crawl into right now. He had completely humiliated himself with what had happened today. He was too ashamed to go back. At that moment, Chanyang Qingyun seemed to have aged. In just a few short months, the Protector clan of Chanyang Prefecture had been humiliated twice. This had never happened in the history of Chanyang Prefecture. The Spirit King stood before the tunnel to the Tian Yuan continent with a metal sword on his back at the top of the World Mountains in the world of Forsaken Saints. He stared at the tunnel that constantly rippled and distorted. Over 40 Origin Realm experts stood in a row behind the Spirit King. They stood there silently while a group of Holy Emperor experts stood behind them. The tunnel is constantly stabilizing. Holy Emperor experts can pass through it now. Holy Emperor will probably be able to enter in around 10 days, said the Spirit King. Spirit King, why don't we send a few Holy Emperor experts into the tunnel first to check out the situation on the other side and understand the exact strength of the other world? A young man at receival politely asked from behind the Spirit King. The Spirit King pondered for a while before nodding slightly. He said without even looking back, "Elders, return to the Sacred Hall immediately and select a few Holy Emperor experts at great perfection. Bring them here and let them scout the way." "Yes, sir." The 8 returnance experts behind the Spirit King replied in unison before leaving the top of the World Mountains together. The top of the World Mountains was extremely dangerous. Even receival experts would face danger there, so only returnance experts will be able to bring Holy Emperor experts up. The several hundred Holy Emperor experts gathered there had only been able to stand there safely because they had been protected by the Spirit King and the 8 returnance experts. However, even with that being the case, several Holy Emperor experts had died in the terrifying environment of the World Mountains. Before long, the 8 returnance experts all returned. They each brought a few Holy Emperor experts at great perfection to the top of the World Mountains. There were 50 of them in total. It was not that they did not want to bring more people, but great perfection Holy Emperor experts were nowhere near as strong as Holy Emperor experts. It was even more difficult for them to survive in the World Mountains. They could only protect a few people with their strength. We greet the Spirit King. The 50 Holy Emperor experts all knelt on the ground and bowed. They were extremely polite. With his back to them, the Spirit King nonchalantly said, "This is a tunnel to another world. Go through this tunnel and check out the situation there. The strength of the other world is unknown, so you must be careful. If it's possible, you could try to negotiate with them." Spirit King, what if the people of the other world attack us? A returnance expert asked. If they attack you, you can obviously fight back. However, I also know that you'll probably die if you go, so leave behind a portion of your soul in the soul jade before you enter the tunnel. Even if you die in the other world, we can use a secret technique to revive you. However, the price is that your strength will drastically decrease after you leave behind your soul. You need to cultivate again after you're revived. The Spirit King paused before continuing. Of course, you don't need to worry. Once you're revived, the Sacred Hall will bestow upon you a batch of cultivation resources so that you can reach Saint Emperor in the shortest amount of time possible as compensation. The Spirit King took out a pile of jades from his space ring and distributed them to the 50 Great Perfection Holy Emperor experts. He said, there should be experts guarding the entrance to the other world. If you can't defeat them, crush these jades. The power of space within the jades will send you to any place in the other world. However, you must remember that if they don't attack you, you can't harm them. Do you understand? Understood. The 50 paragons replied in unison. A returnance expert stepped forward and took out 50 pieces of black jade. He said, these are soul jades. They can preserve your souls. Leave behind a small portion of your souls in the soul jades, and then you can go. The 50 Holy Emperor experts all took out a soul jade and left behind a portion of their souls. After losing a portion of their souls, all of them became rather pale and weak. Afterward, they directly entered the tunnel to the Tian Yuan continent. The Spirit King and over 40 Origin Realm experts watched the group of Holy Emperor experts disappear into the tunnel. None of them left. They did not plan on sending the group to fight. Instead, they wanted to investigate the situation of the other world so that they could gain an understanding. As a result, they all understood that the Holy Emperor experts would probably all die before long. They would be revived through their souls in the Soul Jade and learn about the situation in the other world. Chapter 1283. Jianshun sat like a statue in the artifact space of the Xianhuang microcosm. He held the last 2 Class 9 monster cores in his hands. The sword spirits had already appeared above his head, assisting Jianshun in refining the energy within the monster cores so that he could reach the 4th layer of the chaotic body in the shortest amount of time possible. The 2 Class 9 monster cores in Jianshun's hands glowed with a hazy light. The pure and powerful energy within the monster cores, the pure energy within them was constantly being absorbed by Jianshun before being converted into chaotic force and fused with his chaotic Niden. Jianshun's chaotic Niden had already grown to the size of an adult's fist in his dantian. This was the limit of the 3rd layer of the chaotic body. The 2 Class 9 monster cores in Jianshun's hands shrank at a visible rate. With the assistance of the sword spirits, the energy within the monster cores flowed away at an astonishing rate. After several days of cultivation, Jianshun had already used up all the energy crystals he had obtained from the Xianhuang beasts, as well as the Class 7 and 8 monster cores on him. At this moment, the 2 9th class monster cores in his hands were the only things he had left. When only a third of the energy within the 2 Class 9 monster cores had been absorbed, the chaotic Niden in Jianshun's dantian finally exploded with a boom. At that moment, chaotic force surged out like a flood, wildly surging out from the shattered chaotic Niden. Like a herd of wild horses, it wildly rampaged through Jianshun's body. Jianshun's body violently shook. At that moment, his body actually began to swell at a visible rate. He had actually become twice as large as before, as if he had become an inflated balloon. This was not the first time Jianshun had experienced something like this, so he immediately dismissed his thoughts. He calmed himself down and focused on circulating the chaotic force cultivation method recorded in the Azulite Sword Codex. He did everything he could to control the circulation of chaotic force in his body. Under Jianshun's familiar movements, the chaotic force in his dantian finally came under his control. It began to be compressed and purified, going from the initial 10 strands of chaotic force to 5 strands before compressing the 5 strands into 1 strand. Gradually, the chaotic force in Jianshun's dantian became more and more powerful and pure. As the chaotic force grew stronger, his body began to struggle to endure it. It began to be ravaged by the fourth layer chaotic force. Whether it was his organs or his flesh, they were all violently battered by the fourth layer chaotic force. Blood rapidly oozed from Jinshin's body. In just a short moment, he was covered in blood. Even his clothes were dyed red. Every droplet of blood pulsed with extremely powerful energy. Without a doubt, a single droplet of his blood was enough to kill a saint ruler. Jinshin's body constantly healed and was damaged by the chaotic force. However, every time his body was damaged by the fourth layer chaotic force, strands of fourth layer chaotic force would fuse with his body, causing it to become even more powerful. As his body gradually strengthened, he was able to endure the battering from the fourth layer chaotic force for a longer period of time. Chaotic force increased at the same time as the chaotic body. When the chaotic force reached a new level, his chaotic force would increase as well. His body would need to reach the same level as his strength, or his body would not be able to endure the sudden increase in chaotic force. Right now, Jinshin's chaotic force was increasing from the third layer to the fourth layer. The chaotic force from the fourth layer violently hammered his body. The advancement process lasted for an entire day before finally settling down. Jinshin's chaotic body had advanced from the third layer to the fourth layer in an extremely perfect manner. Both his chaotic body had improved rapidly, but the price he had to pay was that the fist-sized chaotic Niden in his dantian had shrunk to the size of a bean once again. There was not a lot of chaotic force left in it anymore. The blood on Jinshin's body did not coagulate. All the blood returned to his body through his pores. In the end, only his blood-red clothes remained on him. Jinshin slowly opened his eyes. He silently sensed the chaotic body and chaotic force he had just broken through. Uncontainable joy filled his face as he murmured, "The Holy Emperor's 8th heavenly layer. The 4th layer of the chaotic body has allowed me to possess strength equivalent to the Holy Emperor's 8th heavenly layer, and I'm at the peak of the 8th heavenly layer. I'm extremely close to the 9th heavenly layer. The 3rd layer of the chaotic body has allowed me to possess the battle prowess of the Holy Emperor's 3rd heavenly layer. With the Emperor armament, I can reach the 7th heavenly layer. I wonder what kind of battle prowess I can unleash with the Emperor armament now." Jinshin murmured to himself. Not only had his battle prowess increased by a lot, but his defense had also become extremely powerful. The 4th layer of the chaotic body could directly endure attacks from the Holy Emperor's 8th heavenly layer. As a matter of fact, if the Holy Emperor's 8th heavenly layer did not use a saint-tier battle skill, they would not be able to injure him at all. Wounds. This was because the chaotic body was as powerful as chaotic force. Since the chaotic body could contain so much chaotic force, just the defense of the body was not something that the Holy Emperor's 8th heavenly layer could harm. They would not even be able to leave a scratch on his skin. Only those at the 9th heavenly layer could break through the defenses of the chaotic body and injure Jinshin a little. However, the damage would be almost negligible. My current body is probably not even as tough as Class 9 magical beasts, Jinshin thought. At the same time, he suddenly thought of something. If he could reach the 5th layer of the chaotic body, probably even regular holy emperors would not be able to harm him. I've already wasted quite a few days in reaching the 4th layer of the chaotic body. Time is extremely precious, so I need to gather some heavenly resources as soon as possible. I can't stay here any longer, Jinshin thought. Very soon, he suppressed his joy from breaking through. He changed into a set of clean clothes and went to visit the white tiger and Taita. The white tiger was still sleeping. It had not completely digested the immortal tier heavenly resource it had ingested a few days ago, but Jinshin could clearly sense that the white tiger's strength was rapidly increasing. It was close to the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler. Once I leave the Xinhuang microcosm, the white tiger will probably become a Class 8 magical beast as well, Jinshin murmured to himself. The white tiger was an ancient divine beast, a winged tiger. It possessed a unique advantage, allowing it to devour heavenly resources without any restraint to increase its strength. If it were any other beast or human saint ruler, they probably would have exploded and died long ago. Even if they did not explode, there would be irreparable repercussions. Jianshun then went to visit Tai Ta. Tai Ta was still absorbing the energy crystals from the Xianhuang beasts. His strength had reached the level of the Holy Emperor's 7th heavenly layer. Aside from that, even newbies was cultivating. However, he did not increase his strength. Instead, he drank large amounts of water from the spring of life, ingesting the essence nurtured by the spring of life. He focused on refining his soul. The several dozen elites of the Flame Mercenaries did not sit around idly. They worked together with a few Class 7 magical beasts in the artifact space to craft crude wooden boxes out of the wood Jianshun had sent into the artifact space. Chapter 1284. Jianshun constantly searched for reconstruction gel along the way. He had already accumulated a large pile of it in the artifact space. The large ones were the size of an adult, while the small ones were only the size of fist. Now, Jianshun had completely fulfilled Poseidon's request. Whether it was the reconstruction gel or the essence of the springs of life, Jianshun had collected quite a lot of them. Before entering the Xianhuang microcosm, Jianshun had hoped that he could find what Poseidon needed as soon as possible, so that he could leave as soon as possible, so that he could continue absorbing the energy of the worldly ebb and cultivate. However, he was no longer in a hurry now. He wished that he could stay here a little longer. Half a day later, Jianshun found a rather large region of life once again. This time, he was in no hurry to find the heavenly resources. Instead, he stood at the edge of the region and radiated with a powerful presence. It crushed forward, enveloping the entire region. It was filled with provocation. Just as Jianshun's provocative presence expanded, a deafening roar rang out from the center of the region. With the gentle sound of something tearing through the air, a black figure shot toward Jianshun with lightning-like speed. Jianshun's eyes suddenly sharpened. He stared at the rapidly approaching black figure and thought, I just happened to be looking for a Class 9 Xianhuang beast to test my strength. I never thought that I would come across one so soon. Then, he lightly tapped his feet on the ground. His body floated backwards like a fallen leaf. His speed was extremely fast. In just a few seconds, Jianshun had retreated 20 kilometers with lightning-like speed. The Emperor armament silently appeared in his right hand as well. He constantly channeled chaotic force into the Emperor armament from afar, causing it to shine with a bright, black light. The destructive and violent presence it gave off was even denser than before. However, Jianshun soon frowned slightly. He glanced at the Emperor armament in his hand. He could clearly feel that when he channeled his chaotic force into the Emperor armament, it no longer gave him the same feeling as before. When his chaotic force was at the 3rd layer, the Emperor armament was able to withstand it with ease. However, now that his chaotic force had reached the 4th layer, the Emperor armament was unable to withstand it at all. Not only did his chaotic force encounter some obstructions as soon as it entered the Emperor armament, it even slightly damaged the internal structure of the Emperor armament. Although the damage was not severe right now, it would gradually worsen with the number of times he used the Emperor armament. At the same time, it would affect his strength. Looks like the Emperor armament is no longer suitable for me. I need to forge the Azulite swords as soon as possible. Only the Azulite swords can endure chaotic force. Jianshun sighed inside. The Emperor armament that had accompanied him for quite some time was about to be eliminated. A furious roar rang out from up ahead. The Xianhuang beast that had emerged from the region pursued Jianshun relentlessly. Although the Xianhuang beast was not intelligent, it could still tell that Jianshun was trying to provoke it. The Xianhuang beast could not accept the fact that an insignificant existence was trying to provoke it. The Xianhuang beast did not charge at Jianshun in a hurry when it saw Jianshun stop. It stopped 100 meters away and stared at Jianshun with a vicious gaze. At this moment, Jianshun was able to see the appearance of the Xianhuang beast. It was completely black and 4 meters long. It seemed like a panther, but it had a small horn on its head and a pair of short, black wings on its back. Jianshun became rather stern. Even though his strength had increased, he still could not be careless against a Class 9 Xianhuang beast. Although the Xianhuang beast before him was nowhere near the size of the two crocodiles, it was much more powerful than the two crocodiles. Suddenly, Jianshan disappeared from where he was with a single movement. He aggressively charged at the panther with the Emperor armament in hand, attacking it first. The panther produced a deep roar and crouched down. Suddenly, it pushed off and shot out like an arrow. The short wings on its back unfurled slightly as well, increasing its speed by 30%. It charged at Jianshan much faster than Jianshan. Jianshan's eyes narrowed. The panther's speed had exceeded his expectations, but he did not become flustered at all. Just when he was about to come into contact with the panther, he made a strange turn and avoided the panther's frontal attack. He circled around it, and when they passed by each other, Jianshan's Emperor armament stabbed into the panther's abdomen with lightning-like speed. At the same time, a black blur flashed before Jianshan's eyes. With a crisp slap, his chest had been struck by the panther's tail. His clothes were immediately ripped to shreds as he was blown away. Jianshan flew back over 50 meters before landing on the ground. He immediately felt a burning pain on his chest as a red mark had appeared there. Jianshan lowered his head to look at his chest. He was secretly shocked as he thought, if I hadn't reached the fourth layer of the chaotic body, my chest probably would have been ripped apart and injured from that. This Xianhuang beast is so powerful and has such quick reactions. It can actually react in such a short amount of time and use its tail to attack me. It's probably battle-hardened. Jianshan glanced at the panther again. He saw that he had created a meter-long wound on its abdomen that constantly dripped with blood. Looks like my full-powered stab is only as powerful as the Holy Emperor's great perfection. It might barely be as powerful as the Holy Emperor's. The increase in battle prowess from Emperor armament is no longer as great as when it was in the third layer of the chaotic world. Jianshan sighed inside. The Emperor armament in his hand had become rather unwieldy. Roar! The panther produced a deep, furious roar before charging at Jianshan again as a black blur. It directly bit at Jianshan's head. It seemed even more valiant after being injured. Jianshan showed no fear. Strands of chaotic force surged out of his soybean-sized chaotic Niden, filling every inch of his body. He had pushed the fourth layer of chaotic force to its limits. This time, he did not choose to close his eyes. He began an intense battle with the panther with the Emperor armament. The Emperor armament shone with a black light. It had formed a dense net of swords in Jianshan's hand that enveloped the panther. The swords overlapped one another, enveloping the entire region. It was difficult to tell which was fake. Chapter 1285. A sliver of confusion appeared in the panther's eyes. It was unable to tell which of the densely packed sword images were real and which were fake. Sometimes it would feel like all the sword images were fake, and other times it would feel like all the sword images were real. The single-horned black panther could not sense the sword shadow, so it waved its claws wildly, creating gusts of fierce wind. Violent streams of energy shot out from its claws, sending the sand and pebbles on the ground flying. Jianshan focused all of his attention on controlling the Emperor armament. The Emperor armament weaved through the panther's claws, stabbing toward the two swords with lightning-like speed. However, just when the Emperor armament approached the panther's eyes, the panther seemed to sense it. It suddenly tilted its head to the side, barely dodging Jianshan's attack. However, the Emperor armament still left behind a deep gash on its neck. Blood immediately spurted out like a fountain. The panther became even more furious after being injured again and again. It roared at the sky as powerful energy began to gather in its mouth, quickly condensing into a head-sized ball of earthen yellow energy that shot toward Jianshan. At the same time, the short horn on its head began to glow with a faint yellow light. Just when Jianshan wanted to dodge the ball of energy, the horn on the panther's head suddenly shot out a faint yellow light that enveloped him. Immediately, Jianshan felt his body tighten. He had been immobilized by a mysterious force. Jianshan was shocked. He had seen many Xianhuang beasts in the past few days he had spent in the Xianhuang microcosm, but he had never seen one with such a wondrous ability. It could actually immobilize its opponent. Jinshin's chaotic force circulated wildly within him. Only after using all of his strength did he finally shatter the mysterious force around him. However, the delay allowed the ball of energy in the panther's mouth to strike Jinshin's chest. Boom! With a muffled boom, Jinshin was blasted far away, landing on the dry ground a few kilometers away. His chest was badly mutilated, and a few of his ribs were broken. Jinshin stood up from the ground with a flip. Even though his wounds seemed vicious and terrifying, they did not affect his battle prowess by much. As chaotic force circulated through his body, his broken ribs and wounds healed at a visible rate. The strength of the chaotic body was perfectly demonstrated at that moment. The one-horned Black Panther was stunned for a moment when it saw that Jinshin was still able to stand up as if nothing had happened to him after taking a blow from it. However, it quickly reacted and charged towards Jinshin. The yellow light on its horn began to flicker again. Jinshin stood there steadily, using the precious time to heal as quickly as possible. However, he stared at the short horn on the panther's head. He was extremely stern. Although the energy from the horn could only trap him for an extremely short amount of time, it was enough to turn the situation around. He could endure it once or twice, but if he was heavily injured too many times, he would struggle to endure it even with his chaotic force. After all, he was not enduring the Holy Emperor's attacks, but the Holy Emperor's attacks. Be careful, Master. That's an innate ability of some Xianhuang beasts. There aren't a lot of Xianhuang beasts with innate abilities in the Xianhuang microcosm, but every single one of them is basically invincible among those of the same level of strength. All you need to do is dodge the moment the innate ability is used. The Ziying's voice rang out in Jinshin's head. Jinshin was secretly amazed when he heard that. He said, I never thought that Xianhuang beasts would actually have an innate ability. I wonder how many times it can use it. Jinshin had already sensed that the panther had become rather exhausted after using the innate ability once. With the assistance of the sword spirits, Jinshin had already found the minute changes that occurred when the Xianhuang beast used the innate ability, allowing him to successfully dodge the second attack. At the same time, the Emperor armament added a few more wounds to the panther's body. The bodies of Class 9 Xianhuang beasts were just far too tough. Jinshin was unable to pierce through their bodies with his current strength. He could only stab 3 inches deep. At the same time, the Xianhuang beast possessed strands of Xianhuang qi. So even if Jinshin channeled his chaotic force into the Xianhuang beast, the damage he could inflict on it was extremely limited. The panther used its innate ability 3 times in a row. Aside from the first time, it failed to hit Jinshin the other 2 times, so it just stopped using its innate ability. It engaged in an intense battle with Jinshin using its tough body. The powerful ripples of energy from their battle caused the surroundings to become a mess. Gradually, the wounds on Jinshin and the panther rapidly increased. They were completely covered in blood. During this time, Jinshin had tried to blind the panther's eyes several times, but not only was the panther much more powerful than the 2 crocodiles he had encountered, but its reflexes and agility were far greater than the 2 crocodiles. At the same time, the panther had experienced countless battles, so its battle experience was extremely rare among Xianhuang beasts. As a result, the panther would narrowly dodge every time Jinshin stabbed at it. The vitality of Xianhuang beasts was extremely great. Although Jinshin was unable to kill the panther in a short amount of time, it was only a matter of time. Suddenly, a sliver of insight flashed through Jinshin's head. Jinshin's eyes immediately became rather dazed, and he slowed down as well. At that moment, he felt like he had grasped something, but the feeling was like he was looking at a flower through a haze. It was hazy, and he could not see it clearly. Being suddenly distracted during battle was fatal to any expert. The panther immediately arrived before Jinshin during that moment of distraction. It opened its mouth and bit at Jinshin. Chapter 1286. Jinshin still had not woken up. He instinctively swung the chopstick-sized white light in his hand, heading straight for the panther's head. With a slashing sound, The beam of white light cut into the panther's head. With the center of the panther's forehead as the center, it almost cut its entire head in half. Roar! The panther produced a painful cry and immediately became haggard. However, its body still heavily slammed into Jianshun due to inertia. Jianshun staggered back a few steps. He had also awakened from the wondrous state from the panther's collision. A sliver of confusion appeared in his eyes, but they soon sharpened. Bang! A heavy thud rang out from beside Jianshen's feet. The panther had collapsed on the ground and was struggling in pain. The huge wound on its head was a shocking sight. Its central nervous system had been severely injured. Although it was not dead yet, it was on the brink of death. Jianshun did not hesitate at all when he saw this. He immediately stabbed the emperor armament in his hand into the panther's head, piercing through the wound and completely destroying its central nervous system. The panther's body suddenly froze before slowly softening, as if it had lost all its strength. It no longer moved as it lay on the ground. Jianshin removed an energy crystal from the panther's body and casually tossed its corpse into the artifact space. He then sank into his thoughts. Master, I never thought that you would touch upon sword origin again, and it's even deeper than before. I even suspect that Master will be able to comprehend sword origin as soon as you possess a weapon that can be used to dual cultivate with you. Ziying's praising voice rang out in Jinshin's head. Her voice was filled with uncontainable excitement. This only means that Master is extremely suited for the path of the way of the sword. It's extremely difficult for other sword cultivators to comprehend the first realm of the way of the sword. There are even very few people who can comprehend the first realm of the way of the sword as golden immortals. Most people can only comprehend sword origin after reaching Daluo Golden Immortal or Xian Immortal. If Master can forge the Azulite swords, he'll definitely be able to comprehend the way of the sword below Heavenly Immortal and reach sword origin. With Master's talent, he might even reach the fifth realm of the way of the sword and become a new sword god, Qing Suo said excitedly. He was filled with hope for Jianshin's future. Jianshin roused from his thoughts after hearing what the sword spirits had said. He knew that he had just touched upon the first realm of the way of the sword again. It was exactly the same as when he was in the city of God. He had suddenly touched upon this barrier without even realizing it. However, perhaps because he did not possess a weapon that could be used to dual cultivate with him, he was unable to grasp sword origin even after touching upon it twice. He could only unleash a single attack. Once he awakened from that state, he would not be able to enter it again. There were still many things that obstructed him from reaching this realm. Ziying, Qing Suo, can you tell me about the divisions of strength in the Immortals world? I'm completely confused by the Heavenly Immortals, Golden Immortals, Daluo Golden Immortals, and so on, Jianshin said rather gloomily. Ziying and Qing Suo remained silent for a while before Qing Suo said, Master, the divisions of strength in our Immortals world are human immortals, earthly immortals, heavenly immortals, golden immortals, Daluo golden immortals, Xian immortals, 9 heavens Xian immortals, immortal monarchs, immortal emperors, and immortal exalts. Human immortals and earthly immortals are not considered immortals. Human immortals are equivalent to saints and heaven saint masters on the Tianyuan continent, while earthly immortals are equivalent to saint rulers, holy emperors, and holy emperors on the Tianyuan continent. Only heavenly immortals, above the earthly immortals, are true immortals. Jianshin was confused when he heard that. He murmured, Earthly immortals are equivalent to saint rulers, holy emperors, and holy emperors. Only those who surpass the holy emperors are heavenly immortals. So what's up with the origin realm? Master, I was talking about the divisions of strength in our immortals world. The origin realm is the strength system of the saints' world. The saints' world is on the same level as our immortals world, but we are enemies. In the saints' world, there are a total of 5 major realms of strength, which are the mortal realm, sainthood, origin realm, godhood, and primordial realm. The mortal realm is equivalent to the human immortals of our immortals world, ranging from saints to heaven's saint masters. The sainthood is equivalent to saint rulers, holy emperors, and holy emperors on the Tianyuan continent. The origin realm is also divided into 3 realms, which are receival, returnance, and reciprocity. The godhood is equivalent to deity, God, over God, and divine king. The final primordial realm is infinite primordial, chaotic primordial, and grand primordial. The immortal exalts of our immortals world are equivalent to grand primes of the saints' world. Immortal emperors are equivalent to chaotic primes, and immortal monarchs are equivalent to infinite primes. Master, do you still remember the amigami you obtained from the divine hall of the 8 wastelands? The amigami is the famed treasure of the demon monarch of the demon's world, the celestial demon saint. Whether it's in the demon's world or the immortal's world, the celestial demon saint has attracted the attention of many large organizations. This is not only because of the celestial demon saint's talent, but also because he's extremely powerful. He actually fought an immortal emperor for 4 hours as a peak immortal monarch. Although he lost in the end, this matter has shaken up the entire immortals world and demons world. This is because the difference in strength between immortal monarchs and immortal emperors is extremely great in our immortals world. Even god artifacts can't make up for the difference. There are very few people who can take on an immortal emperor as an immortal monarch, yet the celestial demon saint has done it. Qing Suo let out a long sigh when he reached there. His face became rather gloomy. Back then, even Old Master paid some attention to the celestial demon saint. Old Master even said that the celestial demon saint would become a demon emperor soon, equivalent to an immortal emperor in the immortals world. She even had a chance of becoming a demon sovereign in the future. Unfortunately, when we saw the celestial demon saint again, she was already dead. Her famed treasure, the amigami, ended up here for some reason, and the artifact spirit of the amigami has yet to disperse. So, the celestial demon saint actually has such a great background. Jianqin was secretly shocked. The celestial demon saint's strength had completely exceeded his imagination. At the same time, Jianqin understood that he was already an expert on the Tianyuan continent, but he was nothing in the immortals world or the saints' world. Ziying, Qing Suo, are there any experts who have surpassed grand primes and immortal exalts? Jianqin suddenly asked out of curiosity. This time, the sword spirits shook their heads without any hesitation. Ziying firmly said, "There has never been in existence who has surpassed immortal exalts. However, there is one person who has reached the furthest level of immortal exalts. He is the Nirvanic immortal exalt. The Nirvanic immortal exalt's strength had already reached the limits of immortal exalts back then. You could say that he had surpassed immortal exalts, but he still remained an immortal exalt. He was at the very peak of that level of cultivation. Coupled with his 4 Nirvanic swords, he was without a doubt the strongest person in the immortals world. Although Old Master and the Nirvanic immortal exalt were both grand exalts of the immortals world, even Old Master was weaker than the Nirvanic immortal exalt in terms of strength. The Nirvanic immortal exalt is actually so powerful. Jianqin was greatly shocked. He could not help but think of Ada and the others he had encountered in the Sea of Despair. The 4 of them cultivated the cultivation method of the Nirvanic immortal exalt, but seemed to be incomplete. Unfortunately, the Nirvanic immortal exalt, who is known as the strongest in the immortals world, was not the opponent of the warring gods. He died in the battle against the Grand Prime of the warring gods, having his soul wiped out by a single swing of the warring god's axe. Ziying sighed. He felt rather sorrowful. The mighty strongest expert of the immortals world had actually suffered such a miserable fate. Is the Grand Prime of the warring gods really that powerful? Even the strongest in the immortals world, the Nirvanic immortal exalt, was not his opponent? Jianqin immediately asked. He could not help but think of Taita, because Taita was also a warring god. However, he had not matured yet, so he was far from being a Grand Prime. Master, the warring gods were born from the world. They are blessed by the heavens, so their battle prowess is extremely great. No one at the same level of cultivation is their opponent. Not only are warring gods who have reached the peak of Grand Prime invincible in the Saint world, but they're the same in the Immortals world and the Demons world. Probably only the chaotic body can contend against them, but there has never been a chaotic body that has reached the level of Immortal Exalts. However, the Grand Prime of the Warring Gods was heavily injured in the battle against the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, which was why Old Master killed him. Ziying's voice was filled with helplessness. After some thought, Jinshin asked, Ziying, I remember you telling me in the past that the chaotic body in the Immortals world is split into 4 levels, which are the minor achievement, partial achievement, major achievement, and perfection. The 1st to 6th levels are the minor achievement. The 7th to 12th levels are the partial achievement, and the 13th to 18th levels are the major achievement. Is the major achievement equivalent to an Immortal Exalt? Correct. The great perfection of the chaotic body corresponds to the Immortal Exalt level of the Immortals world. The great perfection of the chaotic body has never appeared before. No one has ever cultivated the chaotic body to the great perfection. However, if you cultivate chaotic force to the peak of major achievement, you will possess battle prowess no weaker than Immortal Exalts. However, it's only equivalent to regular Immortal Exalts. It's still nowhere close to the level of the 5 Grand Exalts, Ziying said. Jinshin fell silent when he heard that. He thought, no one has actually reached the great perfection of the chaotic body. Will I be stuck here in the future? Afterward, Jinshin asked about other matters before ending his conversation with the sword spirits. He arrived in the region guarded by the panther and collected many immortal tier heavenly resources. However, to his surprise and joy, he actually discovered a violet cloud peach tree. It was of the 2nd grade, and a single peach could increase his cultivation by 1,000 years. After collecting all the precious items, Jinshin immediately entered the artifact space. He got the artifact spirit to find a random place to hide while he dug a pit in the artifact space. He used a metal container to fill it up with water and began to boil it. After rummaging through his space ring, he took out an exquisite tea set in the end. He had no idea which holy emperor he had killed had left the tea set in his space ring. Master, what are you doing? The Ziying Qing Sua asked in confusion as he watched Jinshin's actions. Jinshin sat in front of the pit and focused on boiling the water. He said seriously, I want to make tea and use the comprehension tea leaves to comprehend sword origin. Master, it's impossible for you to comprehend the 1st realm of the way of the sword origin, if you don't have the sword to cultivate with. There's no need for you to be in such a hurry. Once you've forged the azulate swords, you'll comprehend the 1st realm of the way of the sword very quickly. The 2 sword spirits had existed for countless years, but they had never heard of anyone who could comprehend sword origin without the swords to cultivate with. Even though Jinshin had touched upon this realm twice, they still did not believe that Jinshin could comprehend it now. I don't think anything is absolute. I've already reached sword origin twice. Although I haven't grasped it yet, I do have a vague understanding of this realm. My chaotic body has reached the 4th layer. My strength has increased drastically, but it's still rather difficult for me to deal with a few more powerful Class 9 Shenhuang beasts. I can only kill them easily by borrowing the power of the Way of the Sword. For the sake of making it even further in the Shenhuang microcosm, I have to try regardless of whether I succeed or not, Jinshin said firmly. He had already made up his mind about trying. Chapter 1287. The Comprehension Tea Leaf was an immortal tier heavenly treasure, so it obviously could not be brewed using normal spring water. Otherwise, not only would the effects of the tea leaf decrease, but its quality would decrease as well. Jinshin used the spring of life to brew tea, which was perfect for him. Not only could it completely unleash the effects of the tea leaf, but it could also amplify the effects to a certain extent. The pot of spring of life turned into boiling water very soon. Jinshin grabbed the hot pot with his bare hands and placed an entire leaf into a cup. He began to brew the tea meticulously. The leaf began to slowly dissolve in the boiling spring of life. In the end, the entire leaf completely disappeared, fusing into the boiling spring of life. It made the spring of life even brighter. The heat it emitted carried a mysterious aura of the Grand Tao. Jianshun inhaled deeply and immediately felt his head become empty. He had never felt so clear-headed before. If it were not for the fact that the Xianhuang microcosm was different from the outside world and did not possess the mysteries of the world, Jianshun even suspected that he would have broken through the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler and reached the level of Holy Emperor without his control. He would have grasped the ability to create space gates. Jianshun knew that the tea could not be brewed for too long. Without waiting for the tea to cool down, he directly drank it all in one gulp. At that moment, Jianshun felt a refreshing sensation rise up from his stomach. It entered his head and fused with his soul in the end. Immediately, Jianshun felt like he was hallucinating. At that moment, all the laws of the world seemed to be presented before him. He felt like he had seen through the veins of the world and understood all the mysteries of the world. Jianshun knew that this was not real. He quickly dismissed his thoughts and focused all of his attention on comprehending the way of the sword. Jianshun entered a meditative state and sealed off his senses. He no longer paid attention to the outside world. However, the sword spirits stared at Jianshun nervously. Qing Suo asked in concern, "Ziying, do you think Master can really comprehend the laws of the sword?" In the long river of history, no one has ever been able to comprehend the Tao of the sword with his strength below that of a gold immortal. Ziying shook her head. "Although you and I don't believe that Master can comprehend the way of the sword and reach sword origin before forging the azulate swords, don't forget that Master's affinity with the way of the sword is extremely high. He has touched upon the boundary of sword origin twice as an earthly immortal, and the second time he touched upon it even more deeply. He was even able to unleash 80% of the power of sword origin. With the addition of the comprehension T, even if Master can't reach sword origin, he will still benefit greatly. He might even be able to comprehend sword origin. If Master really can comprehend sword origin this time, becoming a sword god is inevitable. He might even become a sword god much earlier than we predicted," Qing Suo said. Ziying nodded. "Chaos gives birth to yin and yang, and the fusion of yin and yang leads to chaos. You and I have always been born from yin and yang, so the azulate swords are the only weapons suitable for chaotic force. Once Master refines the azulate swords and Master's comprehension of the way of the sword, no one at the same level will be Master's opponent. You'll even be able to kill those at a higher level with ease. If Master comprehends the 5th realm, Sword God, he might be able to rival Grand Exalts with his peak chaotic body." In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Jianshun roused from his meditation. His eyes shone brightly as joy filled his face. Although he had not reached the 1st realm of the way of the sword during the 3 days of comprehension, his comprehension of sword origin had become deeper and deeper. His understanding of the realm rapidly deepened, benefiting him greatly. Without any hesitation, Jianshun immediately used the spring of life to boil another pot of water. He brewed a 2nd leaf of comprehension tea and continued to comprehend sword origin. Jianshun also used 3 days to comprehend the 2nd time. 3 days later, he roused again and immediately brewed a 3rd leaf of comprehension tea. On the 3rd day after Jianshun drank the 3rd leaf of comprehension tea, just when the sword spirits believed that Jianshun was about to awaken, Jianshun's presence suddenly changed. At that moment, his presence became sharp, slowly revolving around him like extremely sharp blades. Although the presence was invisible, everyone could sense its sharpness. In the next moment, strands of white light, as thin as threads and as long as fingers, condensed in the air. They slowly revolved around Jianshun. Every single strand of white light was filled with pure and condensed sword qi. These strands of sword qi were completely different from regular sword qi. Regular sword qi were condensed from energy, but the strands of sword qi around Jianshun were not condensed from energy at all. They were clearly different. This is sword origin. Master has actually succeeded. The sword spirits stared at this scene with their mouths agape. Disbelief filled their faces. The myth that an immortal sword without life cannot reach sword origin has been broken today. Not only does the person who broke this myth not have life to cultivate the immortal sword, he's not even a heavenly immortal. He's still an earth immortal. If this matter were to spread to the immortals world, it would be enough to shake up the entire immortals world. Qin Suan murmured. She stared at Jianshan in a daze. Her face was filled with many different emotions. Excitement, joy, disbelief, and so on all appeared on her face. At this moment, the strands of sword qi that slowly revolved around Jianshan began to slowly gather in front of him. In the end, they fused together and condensed into a small sword that was only a meter long. It shone with an even more resplendent light, and the sword qi became even sharper. Jianshan's eyes remained closed, but he had already slowly raised his right hand. He gently grasped the small sword that was completely condensed from sword qi. At that moment, he seemed to have completely fused with the small sword. The small sword seemed to have become his arm, a part of his body. Jianshan slowly opened his eyes. They were filled with calmness. He focused on the pure sword qi in his hand. He showed no sorrow or joy, but he had comprehended something. Only after a long while did he murmur to himself, "So this is what the way of the sword is like. I've finally understood the way of a sword and reached sword origin." As he said that, Jianshan slowly let go of his hand. The pure sword qi dispersed into the air, turning into nothingness. "Congratulations, Master. You've actually comprehended the way of a sword and reached the first realm of the way of the sword, sword origin." The sword spirits all congratulated him. They were all filled with joy, feeling happy for Jianshan from the bottom of their hearts. Jianshan stood up and smiled happily. He said, "The way of the sword is a form of laws. The sword qi condensed from the comprehension of the way of the sword is also the power of laws. It's extremely powerful, incomparable to the sword qi I condensed from energy in the past. Using the way of the sword against enemies is the same as using laws against enemies. Master, laws are what the world of Forsaken Saints calls them. In our immortals world, we call them the way," Zing corrected him. He was born in the immortals world, so he obviously liked to hear the general name of the immortals world. Jianshan chuckled. He did not dwell on this topic with the sword spirits. He said, "I've already used 9 days to comprehend the way of the sword this time. There's less and less time left, so I need to leave. I think killing Class 9 Xinhuang beasts shouldn't be too difficult with my current strength." Chapter 1288. Tai Ta continued to cultivate, but since absorbing the energy crystals of Xinhuang beasts was much easier than absorbing monster cores, Tai Ta's strength increased extremely quickly. Jianshan could basically sense Tai Ta's strength increasing at all times every day. Jianshan did not disturb Tai Ta. He left the artifact space alone and made his way through the boundless, desolate plains of the Xianhuang microcosm. Thanks to the guidance of the sword spirits, with the help of the spirit swords, Jianshan did not get lost in the Xianhuang microcosm. He maintained a straight line the entire time. A day later, the shadow of a huge mountain range appeared in Jianshan's vision. From afar, it seemed like a huge dragon crouching on the ground. The winding mountain range was extraordinarily steep. Even from so far away, Jianshan could clearly sense a tremendous presence radiating from the mountain range. The mountain range seemed very close, but it was still extremely far away from Jianshan. Jianshan traveled several hundred kilometers before finally arriving at the foot of the mountain range. Immediately, Jianshan felt like he was facing the world. The huge mountain range made Jianshan feel like he was facing a boundless world. It was filled with a tremendous presence, and he seemed like a puny ant before it. This was not just a difference in size, but a difference in presence as well. The mountain range was tens of thousands of meters tall and tens of thousands of kilometers long. He could not see the end of it with a single glance. The peak of the mountain range was hidden within the hazy, yellow clouds. The mountain range was completely red. It was filled with various fiery red plants and gave off dense, fire-attributed energy. The energy was so vast that it was something that Jianshan had never seen before. At the same time, There were strands of Xian Huang Qi mixed in with the fire-attributed energy. This is the elemental mountain range. The elemental mountain range is a natural barrier in the Xianhuang microcosm. The entire elemental mountain range is a circle that surrounds the center of the Xianhuang microcosm. As long as you make it past the elemental mountain range, you'll reach the center of the Xianhuang microcosm. Ziying's illusionary figure appeared above Jinshan's head as she stared at the huge mountain range. With that, Qing Suo appeared as well. He stared at the elemental mountain range and said, "There are quite a few heavenly resources of the 5 elements in the elemental mountain range, and the Xianhuang beasts that guard them are not weak. There are no Xianhuang beasts that are weaker than the Holy Emperor. There might even be 1 or 2 heavenly immortal beasts that appear from time to time. As a result, Master must be careful in the elemental mountain range. There is a qualitative difference between earth immortals and heavenly immortals. With Master's strength, dealing with peak earth immortal Xianhuang beasts will be no problem, but once you come across heavenly immortal Xianhuang beasts, it will be difficult." Jianshun became rather stern. On the Tian Yuan continent, heavenly immortal Xianhuang beasts were existences that surpassed the Holy Emperor. After reaching Sword Origin, Jinshin no longer feared Class 9 Xianhuang beasts, but he did not have much confidence in dealing with Xianhuang beasts that had surpassed the Holy Emperor. Jianshun set foot in the elemental mountain range. He had entered the fire-attributed region, so all the plants in the surroundings were a demonic red. As they swayed gently, they seemed like tiny flames that leapt about happily. As he ventured deeper, the temperature in the surroundings rapidly rose. The plants in the elemental mountain range were not regular plants, but they were not heavenly resources either. They were not very valuable, but there were many heavenly resources hidden within them. "Master, there's a stalk of scorching firegrass 3 kilometers to your left. Not only can people who cultivate fire-attributed cultivation methods increase their cultivation speed, but they can also purify their immortal energy." 15 minutes later, the sword spirits discovered a heavenly resource hidden in the weeds and immediately informed Jianshin. Jianshin immediately arrived there and carefully dug out a plant that resembled a small blade of grass. The scorching firegrass was only the size of a palm and seemed very ordinary. It was so red that it almost dripped blood, and it possessed extremely dense fire-attributed energy. First grade of the immortal tier. Jianshan recognized the grade of the scorching firegrass with a single glance. He had seen quite a few immortal tier heavenly resources in the Xianhuang microcosm, so he had naturally developed a discerning eye for identifying heavenly resources. The scorching firegrass was clearly not a particularly valuable heavenly resource, so there were no Xianhuang beasts guarding it. Jianshan left after harvesting it and continued his search. "Master, there's another flame cloud fruit tree up ahead. It's already at the 4th grade. Qing Suo's voice rang out before long. Jianshan did indeed find a flame cloud fruit tree under Qing Suo's guidance. It was clearly much larger than the one before. There were thumb-sized fruits on it that shone with a faint red light, as if flames were leaping about. However, 2 Class 9 Xianhuang beasts lay there lazily beside the flame cloud fruit tree. They seemed like foxes and were completely fire-red. They were relatively small, only the size of an adult. However, they had the heads of tigers and were abnormally vicious. Their eyes shone with a vicious light. They discovered Jianshan at the same time that he discovered them. They immediately stood up and growled as they slowly made their way toward Jianshan. Their limbs were powerful, and their claws were long and sharp. They flickered with an icy light. Jianshan pulled out the Emperor armament out of habit from his space ring. His mind was blank, having already reached Sword Origin. He swung his sword at one of the beasts from 50 meters away. Jianshan's strike seemed to have activated some sort of presence in the world. It seemed like a simple strike, but it seemed to contain some sort of supreme power. The strike shone brightly, causing the surroundings to dim. An extremely resplendent, snow-white streak of light shot out with lightning speed, heading toward the Class 9 Xianhuang beast. The eyes of the Class 9 Xianhuang beast suddenly narrowed as fear filled its face. It could sense just how terrifying the streak of light was. It wanted to dodge, but it discovered that it could not do so no matter what. As a result, it swung its claws as hard as it could in an attempt to rip the incoming streak of light to pieces. Spurt! The sharp claws of the Xianhuang beast collided with the streak of light. Its two front claws were neatly severed, but the silver streak of light weakened slightly with the obstruction. In the end, it viciously struck the Xianhuang beast's head. A deep wound immediately appeared on the Xianhuang beast's head. Blood spurted out like a fountain, dyeing its entire head red very quickly. Chapter 1289. The Class 9 Xianhuang beast's eyes suddenly narrowed as fear filled its face. It could sense just how terrifying the sword light was. It wanted to dodge, but it discovered that it could not do so no matter what. As a result, it swung its claws as hard as it could in an attempt to rip the incoming sword light to pieces. Spurt! The sharp claws of the Class 9 Xianhuang beast came in contact with the sword light, and its two front claws were neatly severed. However, the silver-white sword light became slightly weaker after being obstructed. In the end, it viciously landed on the beast's head. A deep wound immediately appeared on the Xianhuang beast's head. Blood spurted out like a fountain, dyeing its entire head red very quickly. The other Class 9 Xianhuang beast could not help but stop when it saw its companion injured in a single clash. It stared at Jianshan in fear as it began to consider retreating. Although these Xianhuang beasts were not intelligent, their instincts still made them feel an innate fear when facing existences more powerful than them. Jianshan was clearly stunned when he saw how he had injured a Class 9 Xianhuang beast so effortlessly. After reaching Sword Origin, the increase in his strength had completely exceeded his expectations. However, he soon ravished with joy inside. He understood that Class 9 Xianhuang beasts were no longer a threat to him. The powerful defenses that Xianhuang beasts possessed were probably only a little tougher than tofu to him now. At this moment, the resplendent white light flickered once again as Jianshan swung out with the Emperor armament once again. An extremely pure and powerful sword chi swept toward the heavily injured Xianhuang beast. It seemed like an ordinary strike, but it contained the endless mysteries of the way of the sword. It was as if it was not a sword chi, but a law of the world, a way of the world. The second strand of sword chi entered the wound on the Xianhuang beast's head, cleaving it in half. The sword chi did not slow down at all, moving on to its neck and the small body behind it. In the end, half of the Xianhuang beast's body had been cleaved in half by Jinshan's second strand of sword chi. Only the other half remained connected. It then lay on the ground without moving. Its central nervous system had been pulverized by the brutal sword chi, and its tremendous life force flowed away at an unbelievable rate. The other Class 9 Xianhuang beast was stunned by this as well. When it saw its companion slain so quickly, it also realized that the invader was so powerful that it could not stop him. It immediately produced a frightened roar and turned around to flee into the distance. A Class 9 Xianhuang beast was equivalent to a Class 9 monster core. Class 9 monster cores were extremely precious items on the Tian Yuan continent. So how could Jianshan allow the Xianhuang beast to escape from him? He immediately used the illusory flash and chased after it in a series of blurs. Chaotic force surged out, causing the Emperor armament to shine with a black light. It radiated with a violent presence of destruction. A snow-white streak of light silently appeared on the surface of the Emperor armament, radiating with an extremely powerful sword chi. The silver-white streak of light and the streak of light from chaotic force intertwined on the Emperor armament. They actually seemed like they were about to fuse, but they were clearly much more powerful than Jinshan's previous two attacks. The Class 9 Xianhuang beast was frightened out of its wits when it sensed the terrifying presence behind it. It fled even faster, but as soon as it sped up, it felt a powerful presence lock onto it. The familiar red world before it vanished, replaced by snow white. Spurt! Jinshan's Emperor armament shot out a 10-meter-long streak of black and white light that struck the Xianhuang beast from behind. It had almost cleaved the beast in half with only a fifth of its body still connected. The Class 9 Xianhuang beast no longer had the ability to flee after being so heavily injured. It collapsed on the ground and only stopped after sliding for several kilometers due to the inertia. It let out a painful cry. Jianshan slowly made his way to the Xianhuang beast with the Emperor armament in hand. The beast was still alive, but it was still alive. It was still alive, but it had completely lost the ability to fight. It did not even have the ability to stand up due to its heavy injuries. Jianshan stabbed the Xianhuang beast's head and destroyed its central nervous system, completely ending its life. He removed a Class 9 energy crystal from its body with great familiarity before tossing the corpse into the artifact space. Afterward, Jianshan returned to where he had been before. He stowed away the corpse of the other Xianhuang beast before beginning to harvest the flame cloud fruit. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed since Jianshan had entered the elemental mountains. It had to be mentioned that the elemental mountains were extremely large. Jianshan had remained in there for 5 whole days, but he still had not made it out of the fire-attributed land, even with his speed. However, during that time, Jianshan had collected quite a few heavenly resources. Without any exception, all of them were of the fire attribute. He even came across over a dozen Class 9 and Class 9 Xianhuang beasts, which are all slain by Jianshan. He obtained over a dozen energy crystals that were equivalent to Class 9 monster cores. There were indeed no Xianhuang beasts below Class 9 in the elemental mountains. All of them were at Class 9, but there were far fewer of them than he had imagined. There were so many of them that every single Class 9 Xianhuang beast was scattered extremely far away. They each had their own territory and guarded a few extraordinarily precious heavenly resources. After 5 days of trekking, Jianshan had already climbed to a height of over 100,000 meters. Less than 300 meters above his head was a layer of yellow clouds. The clouds were clearly no ordinary clouds. Jianshan was unable to see through them with his eyesight, and he could sense even denser Xianhuang qi within them. However, he was unable to absorb it no matter what. He could not even take away a single strand of Xianhuang qi. Many of the peaks of the elemental mountains had already reached into the clouds, so it was impossible to see just how tall they were. Jianshan locked onto the peaks that reached into the clouds and continued to climb. As he went deeper and deeper, the surrounding fire-attributed energy became even more abundant. He knew that the closer he got to the top, the higher the quality of the heavenly resources he would encounter. Chapter 1290. The temperature in the surroundings rose higher and higher as a faint, yellow mist permeated the surroundings. Jianshan had already entered the thick layer of clouds, so his vision was greatly affected. His visibility was extremely low, and the suppression on his soul was becoming more and more severe. At this moment, Jianshan suddenly froze. With a single movement, he appeared over 10 meters away, as if he had teleported. Boom! Just as Jianshan moved away, a red blur struck the spot where he had been standing. With a loud boom, rocks immediately flew in all directions as dust filled the air. Jianshan became extremely stern. He had failed to see what the red blur was earlier, let alone figure out what had suddenly attacked him. If it were not for the fact that he had remained vigilant the entire time and managed to dodge in time, he probably would have suffered quite a lot. However, before Jianshan could think too much about it, his face suddenly changed. All his muscles tensed up at that moment as the light in his eyes flickered. He stared straight up. He had been locked onto by a terrifyingly powerful presence. Under the presence, not only did Jianshan find it difficult to breathe, but his body felt as heavy as a mountain. Even his movements were restricted. The presence was so tremendous that it seemed to have frozen every inch of space around him, allowing him to control space to restrain his opponent. An existence that has surpassed the Holy Emperor. Jianshan was shocked. Even though he had not seen the appearance of the Xianhuang beast that had attacked him, he could tell that it was an Origin Realm Xianhuang beast just from its presence. This was because he had already killed many Class 9 Xianhuang beasts, so he had an extremely good understanding of their strength. It was impossible for a Class 9 Xianhuang beast to make him feel so pressured. This Xianhuang beast has already reached the level of heavenly immortals. Master, you're not its opponent. Run. The sword spirit's voices rang out in Jinshin's head. Jinshin retreated without any hesitation when he heard that. He quickly leapt down the mountain range. The difference between the origin realm and sainthood was an entire major realm of cultivation, so the difference in strength was extremely great. Jinshin was confident that he could kill any Class 9 Xianhuang beast, but he did not have the confidence to do so against a Class 10 Xianhuang beast. In just a few seconds, Jinshin had descended several thousand meters through the steep mountain range. He had left a thick layer of clouds in the sky, and his vision finally cleared up. However, he did not dare to relax at all because the tremendous presence that had locked onto him did not disperse. Instead, it had become even more powerful. Oh no, the Class 10 Xianhuang beast is chasing me, and it's getting closer and closer. Jinshin knew that the situation was bad. He abruptly kicked off a tree beside him and shot off into the distance like an arrow. The Xianhuang microcosm was suppressed by a mysterious power, so it was impossible to fly. As a result, Jinshin could only glide like a bird in the mountains that were several tens of thousand meters above the ground, using the illusory flash from time to time. Hiss! At this moment, an ear-piercing hiss rang out from behind. A huge python that was 1,000 meters long appeared before Jinshin without the cover of the thick, yellow clouds. The python glowed with a bright red light, fusing with its surroundings. It silently wriggled as it chased after Jinshin. It was much faster than Jinshin. In the beginning, the red python was still 10,000 meters away from Jinshin, but in just a few seconds, it had shrunk to 2,000 meters and then 300 meters. In the end, it was only a few dozen meters away from Jinshin. Jinshin's heart sank slightly. The landscape of the forest was complicated, so his speed was greatly restricted. The python behind him had clearly lived here for who knows how many years. It moved through the forest like a fish in water, moving with ease. It was impossible for Jinshin to escape from the python's pursuit if the two of them continued on like this. Jinshin just stopped. Chaotic force surged out from his right hand, condensing into a dark energy sword. Resplendent and bright sword chi mixed with the chaotic force, causing its power to increase once again. He had given up on using the Emperor armament long ago. After comprehending sword origin, the damage to the Emperor armament had become even more severe. Even if he used the Emperor armament, it would not increase his strength at all. Since I can't shake off this Class 10 Xianhuang beast, I'll fight it. Although I can't defeat a Class 10 Xianhuang beast no matter what, I can see just how terrifying existences that have surpassed the Holy Emperor are. I'll use this opportunity to gain a rough understanding of their strength, Jinshin thought. He was confident that the Class 10 Xianhuang beast would not be able to kill him easily. At this moment, the python opened its mouth and spat out a huge wave of fire. It swept toward Jinshin with extremely high temperatures. All the plants along the way that came in contact with the wave of fire were reduced to ashes. Jinshin was surprised. He could feel that the flames from the python were even more powerful than the flames that Hong Lian could control. Although Hong Lian was a scorching divine phoenix, a sovereign of fire, the python's flames were much more terrifying than hers due to the great difference in strength between them. Jinshin used the illusory flash to avoid the attack of the flames. He felt rather fortunate that he was only facing a Class 10 Xianhuang beast that did not know any secret techniques. If he faced a true Origin Realm expert, he probably would not even be able to fight back. After avoiding the flames, Jinshin quickly approached the python. He leapt over 10 meters into the air and arrived at the python's heart. He stabbed the sword condensed from chaotic force toward the heart as hard as he could. In the next moment, Jinshin's eyes suddenly narrowed because his full-powered attack had only pierced a finger deep into the python's body. It had only caused an insignificant wound, not even a wound at all. What a terrifying body. It's more than 10 times tougher than a Class 9 Xianhuang beast. Probably only attacks from Origin Realm experts can heavily injure it. Jinshin was shocked. The toughness of a Class 10 Xianhuang beast body had completely exceeded his imagination. Even though he was mentally prepared, he was still shocked. At this moment, a terrifying force appeared. The red python swung its head viciously and knocked Jianshan far away. He smashed through over a dozen thick trees. With that, Jianshan immediately felt like all his bones were about to fall apart. Intense pain pulsed from every part of his body. If it were not for his chaotic body, any other holy emperor would have been reduced to mush. Jianshan barely managed to regain control of his body after being knocked several kilometers away. He then fled into the distance without even looking back. He had gained a rough understanding of a Class 10 Xianhuang beast strength after that short moment of contact. It was impossible for him to fight it head-on. However, Jianshan was affected by the environment and terrain, so he was slower than the red python in the end. It caught up to him before long. "Master, you can't try to outrun this Xianhuang beast in a straight line, or you won't be able to outrun it. Also, the Xianhuang beasts in the elemental mountains all have their own territories. This heavenly immortal Xianhuang beast is probably the ruler of the fire elemental region, so you won't be able to shake it off if you stay here. We just happen to be close to the earth elemental region, so hurry over. Only then will you be able to shake off the Xianhuang beast." Ziying's voice rang out in Jianshan's head. Jianshan raised his head and just happened to see the yellow earth elemental region several dozen kilometers away. He immediately changed directions and ran in an S-shaped direction. Several dozen kilometers only took Jianshan a few seconds to cross. Very soon, he arrived at the edge of the fire elemental region and was about to enter the earth elemental region. The red python immediately became frantic when it saw that Jianshan was about to leave its territory. It spat out streams of fire from its mouth, clearly unwilling to let Jianshan go so easily. This was because the chaotic force on Jianshan made it drool. It was an energy on the same level as Xianhuang Qi, so it could vaguely sense that its strength would increase by quite a lot if it ate this puny being. Several dozen streams of fire shot out from its mouth, forming a huge net that enveloped Jianshan. Although Jianshan dodged most of them, he was still struck by one. An unimaginably high temperature immediately engulfed him, and Jianshan's clothes were immediately reduced to ashes. Even with his chaotic body at the fourth layer, he was unable to endure the heat. He became bright red from the heat as a layer of his skin peeled off. The pain was unbearable. Jianshan gritted his teeth and bitterly endured. He used the illusory flash to avoid the fire. At this moment, he had finally left the fire elemental region and entered the earth elemental region. The red python did not chase after him. It stopped at the border and stared at Jianshan with reluctance. It constantly hissed and hissed. Although the red python did not chase after him, Jianshan did not stop. He endured the burning pain from his body and quickly disappeared into the forest up ahead. The red python stayed at the border for a long time, but in the end, it didn't cross the border. With a face full of unwillingness, it wobbled back. Jianshan currently sat beneath a large tree. His burnt skin peeled off bit by bit before growing new skin. Although he was very badly burned, these small wounds were nothing with the terrifying regeneration of the chaotic body. Chapter 1291. In the blink of an eye, Jianshan had already spent several days in the earth-attributed region of the 5 elemental mountains. During that time, he came across over 20 Class 9 Xianhuang beasts. He killed all of them and collected their corpses and energy crystals. However, Jianshan clearly understood the strength of Class 10 Xianhuang beasts after being hunted down by a Class 10 Xianhuang beast. As a result, he did not provoke any Class 10 Xianhuang beast during this period of time. Whenever he passed by a territory that might be occupied by a Class 10 Xianhuang beast, he would avoid it from afar. Other than that, Jianshan came across many immortal tier heavenly resources as well. The heavenly resources that Jianshan had collected in the Xianhuang microcosm had already formed a small mountain. It was so great that even Jianshan, who had personally collected them, became dumbfounded. Several days later, Jianshan passed through the earth-attributed world. There was only a month and a few days left before he had to enter the Xianhuang microcosm. Looking at the seemingly endless elemental mountains, Jianshan knew that even if he spent all his remaining time here, he probably would not be able to traverse the entire mountain range. The elemental mountains were just far too large. It was the largest mountain range that Jianshan had ever seen. With Jianshan's speed, even the shortest path would take him several days to traverse the region. If he wanted to traverse the entire region, it would take even longer. Let alone traversing the entire region with the remaining time he had left in the Xianhuang microcosm, he would barely be able to traverse an entire region. I can't waste time here. I need to cross the elemental mountains and check out the depths of the Xianhuang microcosm. There should be even more treasures there. Jianshan made up his mind. Although he knew that there were still many Class 9 Xianhuang beasts in the elemental mountains that he had yet to encounter, he had already made up his mind. He immediately changed directions and crossed the elemental mountains, making his way to the depths of the Xianhuang microcosm. Jianshan used 2 whole days to cross the elemental mountains. He arrived in the basin surrounded by the elemental mountains. The basin seemed more like an ancient forest. Towering trees rose from the ground, reaching several hundred or even thousands of meters tall. Grass was lush, reaching over 10 meters tall. It was filled with vitality. Although it was only a mountain range away, the difference between the two was like 2 completely different worlds. Jianshan entered the ancient forest. There were even more heavenly resources in there than in the elemental mountains. After traveling just over 10 kilometers, he came across a violet cloud peach tree. It had reached the 5th grade of the immortal tier, and a single peach could increase his cultivation by 2,500 years. An extremely powerful Class 9 Xianhuang beast guarded the peach. Jianshan estimated that even if the Xianhuang beast had not reached the peak of Class 9, it was close. It took him quite some effort to slay it and collect all the peaches. These are mortal energy fruits. Master, mortal energy fruits are a type of fruit that can replenish immortal yuan force extremely quickly. If you expend too much of your immortal yuan force in battle, a single mortal energy fruit will allow you to recover to your peak condition in an extremely short amount of time. Zing discovered another extremely rare heavenly resource and excitedly called out, "Master, go pick the mortal energy fruits. Even in the immortals world, they're extremely rare. They're one of the best immortal fruits in the immortals world. Every single one of them is extremely expensive, and these mortal energy fruits have all reached the 5th grade of the immortal tier." Qing Sua also happily urged Jianshan. Jianshan gazed over and saw a few fist-sized, milky white fruits on a 10-meter-tall tree. There were a few strange patterns on the surface of the fruits. At a closer glance, they seemed like human faces. There's also amethyst spiritual bamboo there. The sap of the amethyst spiritual bamboo is a supreme grade immortal material for healing the soul. At the same time, it can condense and strengthen the soul. It's worth far more than the mortal energy fruit. It's something that can't be bought even in the immortals world. Ziying then pointed at the violet bamboo forest near the mortal energy fruit. The joy on his face became even thicker. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly became stunned. He stared at a fist-sized, violet rock in the bamboo forest. A while later, he suddenly cried out, "Een Hellstone! That's Een Hellstone! Master, there's another piece of Een Hellstone near the amethyst spiritual bamboo. That's the final material Master needs to forge the azulite swords." Qing Sua was surprised when he heard that. He immediately glanced over, and joy filled his face as well. He said, "It really is Een Hellstone. I never thought that the final material for forging the azulite swords would be here. Master, you have to get that piece of Een Hellstone no matter what. Once the azulite swords are forged, Master can truly begin to cultivate the way of the sword and learn the abilities of the way of the sword." Jianshan also became excited. Forging the azulite swords was extremely important to him. Not only would it allow him to possess a weapon that truly suited him and greatly increase his strength, but it would also allow him to formally cultivate the abilities of the way of the sword. He would continue to comprehend the deeper parts of the way of the sword and learn the abilities of the way of the sword. he would truly become a sword cultivator. He had already broken through to sword origin, and his battle prowess had greatly increased. However, he did not have a sword that he could use with his life. As a result, every time he used the abilities of the way of the sword, he felt like they lacked smoothness. He struggled to use them as he wished. Although Jianshun was tempted to immediately rush over and grab the Yin Hellstone, he could not help but suppress his impulse. He looked around cautiously as he even expanded his soul. Jianshun had learned from the sword spirits that both the mortal energy fruit and the amethyst spiritual bamboo were heavenly resources that were no weaker than 5th-grade violet cloud peaches. Now that the two heavenly resources had been gathered together with a piece of Yin Hellstone, the Xianhuang beast that guarded this place was definitely not weak. The senses of Jianshun's soul were severely suppressed in the basin. Even when he used his soul as much as he could only cover a radius of 2.5 kilometers. As for the two heavenly resources, moreover, the Yin Hellstone was still 10 kilometers away from him. If there was a Xianhuang beast hiding there, he would not be able to discover it. For a moment, Jianshun became rather troubled. He had to obtain the Yin Hellstone no matter what, but the Xianhuang beast guarding the mortal energy fruit and amethyst spiritual bamboo was extremely likely to be a class 10 or even stronger. It was not something he could contend against. If he was hunted down by such a powerful Xianhuang beast, he had no idea whether he would have the time to take away the Yin Hellstone. Master, there are no Xianhuang beasts within a radius of 2.5 kilometers of the mortal energy fruit and amethyst spiritual bamboo, so they've probably left. However, from the presence that the Xianhuang beast left behind, it's already at the level of heavenly immortals and late, or even peak heavenly immortals, Xing sternly said. What? The Xianhuang beast has already reached late, or even peak heavenly immortals. Doesn't that mean it's even more powerful than the python I came across a few days ago? Jinshin's heart skipped a beat. This was extremely bad news for him. Indeed, the python master came across a few days ago was only at early heavenly immortals. It was quite lacking compared to the Xianhuang beast. Qing Suo also became rather stern. They did not know whether Jinshin could escape from the Xianhuang beast or not. Xing, Qing Suo, can you find out just how far away the Xianhuang beast is from here? If it's far enough away, I can try. Perhaps I'll have enough time to take the Yin Hellstone and retreat. Jinshin asked. Right now, all he cared about was the Yin Hellstone. Although the mortal energy fruit and amethyst spiritual bamboo were valuable, he had temporarily cast them aside. Although the Xianhuang beast was not near the Yin Hellstone, it was still a class 10 Xianhuang beast after all. It could cross several dozen kilometers in the blink of an eye. Jianshun was afraid that the Xianhuang beast was close to the Yin Hellstone and just happened to be out of the range of the sword spirits. Chapter 1292. Jianshun hesitated. He was hesitating over whether he should charge up and collect the Yin Hellstone first. The Yin Hellstone was just far too important to him. It was a material he could not lack for the Azulite swords. The value of the Yin Hellstone had already exceeded the value of the amethyst spiritual bamboo and the mortal energy fruit. Just as Jianshun was hesitating, the ground suddenly began to tremble rhythmically. Soon after, a powerful presence appeared in front of him. Just the presence alone was enough to suffocate Jianshun. Jianshun was surprised. He carefully concealed his presence and silently retreated. He only stopped when he reached a distance he believed to be safe. Although he failed to see the Xianhuang beast's true body due to the cover of the forest, he knew that the Xianhuang beast must have been guarding the mortal energy fruit and amethyst spiritual bamboo. Jianshun did not retreat too far away. He was only around 20 kilometers away from the Yin Hellstone. It was impossible for him to hide from an Origin Realm expert at such a close distance. However, these were Xianhuang beasts that did not possess any secret techniques or intelligence, which was why Jianshun was bold enough to hide 20 kilometers away from the Origin Realm Xianhuang beast. Jianshun climbed up a tree silently like a snake and looked ahead. He saw an elephant-like Xianhuang beast walk over from afar. It headed in the direction of the mortal energy fruit and amethyst spiritual bamboo. The elephant-like Xianhuang beast was extremely huge. It stood over 30 meters tall and had 2 horns on its head. It did not have tusks, nor did it have a long nose. Its mouth was triangular, revealing 3 rows of sharp teeth that flickered with a cold light. This should be the class 10 Xianhuang beast guarding this place. Its strength has reached late heavenly immortal or even peak heavenly immortal. It's even more powerful than the python I came across a few days ago. Jianshan crouched on a tree 20 kilometers away. He silently stared at the Xianhuang beast up ahead. Although it was very far away, there were not a lot of obstructions in his line of sight from where he was hiding. As a result, he could clearly see everything about the Xianhuang beast. Jianshan discovered that the Xianhuang beast had crouched down beside the mortal energy fruit tree. It opened its mouth and sucked in a visible amount of energy from the tree. The Xianhuang beast was covered in countless wounds of various sizes. Every single one of them was terrifying and extremely deep. There were even a few large wounds on its head. This Xianhuang beast went through a battle not too long ago, and it's heavily injured. Jinshan's eyes immediately lit up when he saw this. If the Xianhuang beast was heavily injured, its strength would definitely not be comparable to when it was at its peak. Although the Xianhuang beast had reached late heavenly immortal or even peak heavenly immortal, it was no longer at its peak. At the same time, there were many terrifying wounds on its body. It was completely possible to use these wounds as an opening to destroy the insides of its body. Other than being powerful enough to rival Origin Realm experts, Class 10 Xianhuang beasts also possessed a great advantage in terms of defense. Under normal circumstances, only experts on the same level as Xianhuang beasts could break through their defenses and injure them. However, once they lost this advantage, even existences weaker than them could still injure them. The flames of hope reignited in Jian Chen's heart when he discovered that the Xianhuang beast was heavily injured. At that moment, an extremely bold idea appeared in his head, which was to kill the Xianhuang beast. With my current strength, killing the Xianhuang beast will probably be a certain amount of difficulty, Jianshan thought. Jianshan secretly assessed the difference in strength between him and the Xianhuang beast before frowning again. He had already reached a conclusion. Even if the Xianhuang beast was heavily injured, killing it would still be extremely difficult or even impossible. At this moment, Jinshan's face changed. A sliver of joy appeared on his face. He immediately descended from the tree and silently retreated several dozen kilometers. Only when he arrived at the foot of the elemental mountains did he stop. With a thought, the saint artifact flew out from between his eyebrows with a dazzling golden light. With a flash, Tai, who was 3 meters tall, appeared beside him. Not only did Tai's presence become even more powerful, but even his skin had become even more dazzling. He seemed to radiate with endless golden light, making him seem like a golden giant. Jianshan, I should be able to deal with Class 9 Xianhuang beasts now, so I've come out of seclusion to kill them with you. That way, we'll be able to obtain even more Class 9 monster cores, Tai said with a muffled voice. He directly referred to the energy crystals in the Xianhuang beasts as monster cores. Jianshan secretly rejoiced inside when he sensed Tai's great confidence. He was just about to deal with a heavily injured Class 10 Xianhuang beast when he was worried about his lack of strength. He never thought that Tai would come out of seclusion at a time like this, making up for his lack of strength. Although Tai had yet to become a holy emperor, he had reached the 8th heavenly layer of the Holy Emperor after a period of seclusion. Coupled with the mysteries of war that he had grasped, he could definitely kill Class 9 Xianhuang beasts with ease. Even if he faced a heavily injured Class 10 Xianhuang beast, he would still be able to put up a fight. Tai, there's a heavily injured Class 10 Xianhuang beast up ahead. The 2 heavenly resources it's guarding are both extremely valuable, and one of them is extremely important to me. I have to obtain it no matter what. Do you have the confidence to kill it with me? Jianshan said to Tai. His eyes were filled with battle intent. Tai's eyes lit up. He stared at Jianshan in interest and asked with burning desire, a Class 10 Xianhuang beast? Isn't that an existence that surpasses the Holy Emperor? If we kill it, Won't we get a Class 10 monster core? Although Tai Ta's strength was impressive, his knowledge was very limited, let alone a Class 10 monster core. Even a Class 9 monster core was something of legend to him. Only after he came to the Xianhuang microcosm did he truly see a Class 9 monster core. Moreover, it could not be called a monster core, but an energy crystal condensed within a Class 9 Xianhuang beast. That's right. Jianshan nodded with certainty. Jianshan, I'll listen to your arrangements. If you think the two of us can defeat it, let's fight the Class 10 Xianhuang beast. We'll kill it if we can, Tai Ta immediately said. He also knew that he was nowhere near as intelligent as Jianshan, so he just left the decision to Jianshan. He then rubbed his hands together in excitement and murmured, a Class 10 monster core. I've never heard of one on the Tianyuan continent. I wonder how much it's worth. Jianshan secretly shook his head when he heard Tai Ta's murmur. He bitterly smiled. On the Tianyuan continent, only an extremely small number of Class 7 monster cores would appear in large auctions. Class 8 and 9 monster cores had never appeared on the market, let alone Class 10 monster cores. Tai Ta, the Xianhuang beast, is heavily injured and has lost a lot of its strength. We need to act as soon as possible, or it'll recover slightly with every second we waste, which will make it even more difficult to deal with. Let's discuss how to deal with the Class 10 Xianhuang beast right now. Jian Chun quickly told Tai Ta the method to deal with Class 10 Xianhuang beasts. Forceful confrontations would not work if they wanted to kill a Class 10 Xianhuang beast. The elephant-like Xianhuang beast lay on the ground beside the mortal energy fruit tree in an extremely weak manner. It constantly absorbed the energy from the tree to heal. Its face was haggard and sickly. Clearly, it was heavily injured. Suddenly, its half-closed eyes abruptly opened. Although its eyes were filled with exhaustion, they were incomparably sharp and fierce. It opened its mouth and let out a deafening roar. It struggled to stand up from the ground, but it was extremely strenuous. A dazzling golden light flickered in the forest. Tai Ta appeared before the Xianhuang beast as if he had teleported. He shone brightly as supreme battle intent radiated from him, condensing into the golden axe above his head. Mysteries of war, destruction. Tai Ta bellowed out. The axe above his head shone with a dazzling light as it struck the deepest wound on the Xianhuang beast's head with lightning-like speed. Spurt. Blood immediately sprayed into the air. Tai Ta's strike had caused a vicious wound on the Xianhuang beast's head to become even larger. It was so painful that the Xianhuang beast cried out. At this moment, the Xianhuang beast finally stood up with great difficulty. It immediately raised a huge foot and stomped down on Tai Ta. The sole of the foot flickered with an earthen yellow light, covering an area 3 meters in diameter. It just happened to envelop Tai Ta. Tai Ta immediately felt his body sink as his feet sank into the ground. At that moment, he felt like his body had suddenly become countless times heavier. Just raising his hand required over 10 times more strength than usual, so his movements became abnormally sluggish. Mysteries of war, celestial pursuit. Tai Ta bellowed out as he used the celestial pursuit to leave the region enveloped by the yellow light. As soon as he left the region enveloped by the yellow light, he immediately felt his body lighten. The weight that the Xianhuang beast exerted on him vanished. Boom! At the same time, the Xianhuang beast stomped down heavily on the ground. Not only did its seemingly heavy foot fail to create a deep crater in the ground, it did not even leave behind a mark. However, it produced a heavy thud, causing the ground to shake violently. Tai Ta became extremely stern. He knew that the Xianhuang beast stomp was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. There was another secret behind it. If he was struck by the stomp, he would probably be reduced to pieces even with his body of the war god. Chapter 1293. The bolt of lightning was just too fast. It did not give people any time to react. All Tai Ta saw was a flash of lightning before he was struck by the bolt of lightning. Iron Tower's body suddenly froze. A ball of blue-purple electric light wrapped around his body and made crackling sounds. Iron Tower's skin quickly turned from gold to black at a speed visible to the naked eye. There was a burnt smell in the air. Boom! Tai Ta collapsed on the ground as lightning constantly flickered around him. The lightning from Xianhuang Beast's head and feet possessed unbelievable power. Tai Ta's entire body had been paralyzed by the lightning, and even the tremendous amount of energy within him had become rather sluggish. The Xianhuang Beast produced a shocking roar and quickly made its way to Tai Ta's side. It raised a foot and stomped down on Tai Ta. An earthen yellow light flickered beneath its foot, and the gravity of any region enveloped by the light rapidly increased. At this moment, two resplendent strands of sword chi shot out from the forest with dazzling white light. They were like streaks of light as they struck the Xianhuang Beast's eyes with unstoppable sharpness. Spurt! Spurt! Blood immediately splattered as the eyes of the Class 10 Xianhuang Beast exploded from the two sudden strands of sword chi, turning them into two bloody holes. The Class 10 Xianhuang Beast produced a painful wail as its foot slowed down. Using this opportunity, Jianshun leapt out of the forest and arrived beside Tai Ta as quickly as he could with the illusory flash. He grabbed Tai Ta's shoulder and tossed him into the distance. Jianshun understood Tai Ta's situation in a short amount of time. His hand came into contact with Tai Ta's shoulder. He immediately let out a sigh of relief. Although Tai Ta was heavily injured, his life was not in danger. His body had just become numb from the lightning, so he had temporarily lost the ability to move. The Class 10 Xianhuang Beast had already lost its sight. The intense pain from its eyes exploding had stimulated its nerves, causing its senses to plummet. It was the perfect opportunity to heavily injure it. Jianshun leapt onto the Xianhuang Beast's head after tossing Tai Ta away. He used chaotic force and sword origin at the same time as an extremely powerful sword chi condensed in his hand. He stabbed it toward the deepest wound on the Xianhuang Beast's head. Although the sword chi had stabbed into the Xianhuang Beast's head, Jianshun felt a powerful resistance, preventing his sword chi from advancing any further after less than a meter. Jianshun was secretly shocked. The Xianhuang Beast's defenses were much more powerful than the python he had encountered before. He had clearly stabbed into its body, yet he still encountered such a powerful resistance. If it were not for the fact that it was heavily injured and covered in countless deep wounds, he and Tai Ta probably would not have been able to pierce through its skin. The Xianhuang Beast's horns began to flicker with blue lightning once again. Jianshun's eyes immediately narrowed. He had already experienced the terror of the blue lightning from Tai Ta, so without any hesitation, he leapt off the Xianhuang Beast's head in an attempt to dodge the lightning. Arcs of lightning shot out from the horns of the Class 10 Xianhuang Beast as well, striking the ground. However, the arcs of lightning suddenly exploded when they were 2 meters from the ground, forming a dense web of electricity that enveloped a radius of 100 meters. Jianshun had never thought that the Xianhuang Beast would know such an ingenious move. He was immediately struck by a few bolts of lightning, and his clothes were reduced to ashes. His entire body was charred black from the powerful electricity as it constantly flickered with electricity. Jianshun followed Tai Ta's example and collapsed. The powerful electricity had paralyzed his body and stiffened his limbs, making it extremely difficult for him to even move a single finger. The circulation of chaotic force within him became extremely slow as well. Although the Xianhuang Beast was blind, it could still sense Jianshun's position. It raised a huge foot and stomped down on Jianshun. The yellow light from the foot had already enveloped Jianshun. Immediately, Jianshun felt like a huge mountain had suddenly fallen on him, making him extremely heavy. Jianshun was powerless to dodge at this moment. All he could do was watch as the Xianhuang Beast stomped down on him. Bang! With a heavy sound, the Xianhuang Beast stomped down on Jianshun with an unimaginably terrifying force. Jianshun did not sink into ground, but he clearly sank a little. Spurt! Jianshun vomited a mouthful of blood as his face immediately became sheet white. He had almost been flattened by the stomp, and his organs had been pulverized. Most of his bones had been pulverized, and his chest had been reduced to a bloody mess. He was covered in blood. Even Jianshun was unable to endure the stomp from the Class 10 Xianhuang beast with his fourth layer chaotic force. If it were any other expert, even if they were a true holy emperor, they probably would have been reduced to mush. Jinshin lay on the ground, unable to move. He was so heavily injured that even his chaotic body could not recover in a short amount of time. However, the numbness in his body rapidly receded, allowing him to slowly regain control over his body and chaotic force. However, the Class 10 Xianhuang beast did not give Jinshin any time to catch his breath. It opened its mouth wide, revealing 3 rows of abnormally sharp teeth. It grabbed Jinshin with its mouth and viciously bit down on his chest, almost tearing Jinshin in half. Only 2/5 of the flesh on his chest remained. "Jinshin, I'm coming." A furious bellow rang out from nearby. Taita, who had been thrown away by Jinshin, had already recovered. He flew over with lightning speed with his golden axe in hand. His body flickered with golden light as his presence surged with battle intent. Mysteries of war, form shatter. Taita held his axe with both hands and raised it above his head. Immediately, a dazzling golden light shone from the axe, turning into a golden blur as he swung it toward the Xianhuang beast's head. The power of this axe had been completely restrained. From the outside, one could not feel the slightest bit of pressure. However, as this axe was chopped out, it gave people a feeling of great power. The power inside seemed to be endless, endlessly growing and multiplying. It was like the waves of the sea. At the same time, it gave people a feeling of extreme instability. It was like gunpowder that could explode at any time. The golden axe landed on the deepest wound on the Xianhuang beast's head. Suddenly, the terrifying energy within the axe seemed to explode like a barrel of gunpowder. It turned into a stream of golden energy that wreaked havoc in the Xianhuang beast's head. The energy within the axe seemed to be endless, growing and multiplying without end. Streams of golden energy surged out endlessly from the axe, turning into powerful attacks that constantly tore at the wound on the Xianhuang beast's head. The wound grew deeper and deeper as the damage became more and more severe. In the end, it finally breached the final layer of defense of the Class 10 Xianhuang beast's head. Endless streams of golden energy flowed into the depths of the Xianhuang beast's head, shattering its central nervous system. With its central nervous system destroyed, the Class 10 Xianhuang beast immediately seemed to lose all its strength. It fell to the ground with a loud thud, causing the ground to violently tremble as its heavy body slammed into the ground. Taita finally let out a sigh of relief when he saw the Class 10 Xianhuang beast collapse. A sliver of exhaustion appeared on his face. He murmured, "I never thought that using the mysteries of war would be so tiring. I can use the Mortal Breaker, the Space Breaker, and the Destruction Arts over 10 times in a row without taking a single breath. I never thought that I would need to use half of my energy just from using it once. Looks like the mysteries of war created by Uncle Ruijin can't be used so easily." Taita put away the axe and arrived before the Xianhuang beast's mouth. He saw that most of Jinshin's body was in the Xianhuang beast's mouth. Its sharp teeth had pierced through his body, so only his chest remained exposed. Everything below his chest was in the Xianhuang beast's mouth. Taita crouched down and opened the Xianhuang beast's mouth. He carefully carried out Jinshin's battered body and asked in concern, "Jinshin, are you fine?" Jinshin bitterly smiled and said with a pale face, "I'm very heavily injured this time. I've temporarily lost the ability to move, so I need to enter the artifact space to heal." With that, Jinshin pointed at a patch of amethyst spiritual bamboo in the distance with great difficulty. He said, "Taita, there's a violet rock in the bamboo forest. It's extremely important to me, so help me collect it right now." Taita stared at the Een Hellstone in doubt. He really cannot understand just what was so important about the rock. It cannot be eaten, nor could it be used for cultivation. As for selling it for money, he did not believe that Jinshin lacked money. However, even though he was filled with doubt and confusion, Taita did not hesitate at all. After hearing Jinshin's words, he immediately stood up and walked toward the Een Hellstone. When Taita returned to Jinshin's side with the Een Hellstone, it was no longer as fist-sized as it had been in the beginning. It was actually larger than Jinshin had imagined it to be. This one was even bigger. It was actually half the height of a person. However, most of its body was buried in the ground, leaving only a fist-sized tip exposed. Chapter 1294. Jinshin got the artifact spirit to find a place to hide himself before entering the artifact space with Taita to heal. He was so heavily injured this time if he had relied on his chaotic body alone. If he relied on the artifact spirit, he would need quite some time to make a full recovery. He needed the assistance of the Saint artifact to make a full recovery in the shortest amount of time possible. Aside from him, Taita had not recovered from his wounds either. Using the mysteries of war at the end had basically drained half of his power, so he needed some time to recover as well. With the assistance of the artifact spirit, a Class 8 Radiant Saint Master, Jinshin recovered from all his wounds in less than 4 hours, returning to his peak condition. Taita had recovered as well, but he was currently holding an energy crystal from a Class 8 Xianhuang beast to recover because he had used up too much energy. Jinshin did not disturb Taita. He left the artifact space all by himself, silently. The Class 10 Xianhuang beast they had just killed still lay on the ground. Blood dyed the ground red. Jinshin only managed to remove the Class 10 energy crystal from the Xianhuang beast after a tremendous amount of effort. It was only slightly smaller than an egg, but the energy within was so great that even Jinshin's face changed. The difference between it and a Class 9 monster core could only be described as a chasm. However, what Jinshin did not know was that the energy within the crystal had already exceeded that of a regular Class 10 monster core. It was only because this was the first time he had seen a Class 10 monster core that he lacked a reference, which was why he was unable to make an accurate judgment. Jinshin stowed the energy crystal away. Of course, he did not let the corpse of the Xianhuang beast go either. He stowed it away in the artifact space and told the artifact spirit to store it properly. He had already made up his mind to give the energy crystal to Taita. He wanted the corpse of the Xianhuang beast for himself. Jinshin then arrived beside the mortal energy fruit tree. He took out 360 roughly crafted wooden boxes from the artifact space and plucked all the mortal energy fruits from the tree. Afterward, he dug up all the amethyst spiritual bamboo. The sap from the amethyst spiritual bamboo was a supreme quality immortal material for healing the soul. At the same time, it could condense and strengthen the soul, so it was far more valuable than the mortal energy fruit. The only pity was that there were not a lot of amethyst spiritual bamboo in the area. There were only around 100 stalks in total, and each stalk could only produce a single drop of sap. Healing the soul required one to consume a dozen drops of sap, depending on the degree of the injury. Although the stalks had given Jinshin the same amount of sap, it was not enough to last a few times. Aside from the mortal energy fruit and the amethyst spiritual bamboo, Jinshin found a few heavenly resources of slightly lower quality nearby. However, they were all at the immortal tier without any exception. He followed the tracks left behind by the Class 10 Xianhuang beast. In the end, he discovered the corpse of another Xianhuang beast several dozen kilometers away. It was covered in vicious wounds and was covered in blood. Dried blood could be seen on its body. He could clearly see that the Xianhuang beast's skin had been charred from electricity. The air was filled with a burnt smell. Jinshin immediately rejoiced, because the Xianhuang beast was also a Class 10 vicious beast. Moreover, it seemed like the energy crystal in its body had not been taken away. Jinshin observed the surroundings. After confirming that there were no hidden dangers, he quickly made his way over to the Xianhuang beast's corpse. After expending a tremendous amount of effort, he finally removed an energy crystal that was a few times smaller than an egg. Jinshin smiled happily as he looked at the blood-soaked energy crystal. Although the energy in the crystal was not as great as the one he had obtained earlier, it was still a Class 10 energy crystal after all. The amount of energy within it still shocked Jinshin. Moreover, the most important thing was that this Class 10 energy crystal could be said to have been picked up from the ground. Jianshun happily put away the energy crystal and the corpse of the Xianhuang beast before looking around. However, he did not find any heavenly resources nearby. This must not be the territory of the class 10 Xianhuang beast. Who knows where it came from? It wanted to take over the territory where the mortal energy fruit and amethyst spiritual bamboo grew, but it was not strong enough in the end, so it was slain here by an even stronger Xianhuang beast, Jinshin thought. He looked around and found another trail very quickly. This should be the path that the Xianhuang beast took to come here. I should be able to reach its original territory through this path. I wonder what treasures there are in its original territory, Jinshin thought. After a moment of hesitation, he immediately followed the path. Jinshin carefully advanced through the forest with his presence concealed. After traveling over 1,000 kilometers and dealing with several Class 9 Xianhuang beasts, he finally arrived in the original territory of the Class 10 Xianhuang beast. However, Jinshin did not approach it. Instead, he stopped very far away and carefully retreated. He had already sensed a very powerful presence up ahead. The territory had already been taken over by another Class 10 Xianhuang beast. Although he did not know the exact strength of the Class 10 Xianhuang beast, Jinshin did not want to provoke it even if it was the weakest Class 10 Xianhuang beast. He had almost lost his life to a heavily injured Class 10 Xianhuang beast earlier. So he and Taita probably would not be able to deal with the Xianhuang beast at its peak condition, even if it was not as powerful as the elephant. On the surface, it was very likely that the Xianhuang beast had arrived later. It had chased away the original owner of the territory, which led to the battle between the original owner and the elephant. In the next few days, Jinshin and Taita wandered through the forest. They found a large number of heavenly resources. Not only did they find fruits of the 5 elements, but they even found several comprehension tea trees and violet cloud peaches. It was a bountiful harvest. They even found quite a few materials for forging various artifacts. Jinshin did not recognize a single one of them. They were all identified by the sword spirits. Although they were not needed for forging the azulate swords, they were important materials for forging other immortal artifacts. However, the violet cloud peaches and comprehension tea trees were only of the 5th grade at best. It was not that Jinshin did not find anything of higher grade, but that the higher grade comprehension tea trees and violet cloud peaches were all protected by powerful Class 10 Xianhuang beasts. So all Jinshin could do was sigh. Jinshin had already spent 2 whole months in the Xianhuang microcosm. There was only a month left before he had to leave. Jinshin calculated the time every day so that he would not miss the deadline. I can still stay here for half a month. After that, I'll be on my way back. The remaining half a month should be enough for me to return to where I came from, Jinshin calculated before carefully venturing deeper into the forest. In the forest of unknown size, there were Xianhuang beasts. Not only were there Class 9 Xianhuang beasts, but there were also quite a few Class 10 Xianhuang beasts. As a result, Jinshin remained extremely cautious. He would kill Class 9 Xianhuang beasts whenever he came across them, but he would avoid Class 10 Xianhuang beasts from afar. Although it was impossible for him to discover Class 10 Xianhuang beasts that had concealed their presences with his strength, Jinshin did not have to worry about accidentally appearing in front of Class 10 Xianhuang beasts due to the assistance of the sword spirits. Jinshin and Tai Ta continued on for over 10,000 kilometers. In the end, they were stopped by a barrier completely condensed from Xianhuang Qi. The barrier was connected to the sky and connected to the underworld. It seemed like a wall that divided the world into two. Xianhuang Qi lingered in the barrier, drifting about like mist. It would be dense at times and thin at other times. It was possible to vaguely make out what was inside. It was blurry and hazy, like flowers in a mist. Jinshin's eyes immediately widened when he saw it. His heart began to beat violently, uncontrollably. A blurry violet cloud peach appeared before him, and with his understanding of violet cloud peaches, he could tell with a single glance that it was of a higher grade than any violet cloud peach he had ever seen before. Zing, Qing saw that's a supreme grade violet cloud peach. Jinshin's breathing became rather ragged. He could now tell the difference between 6th grade heavenly resources and 6th grade heavenly resources. He was unable to tell the grade of heavenly resources beyond the 6th grade, yet he was unable to tell the grade of the violet cloud peach in the barrier at all. This could only mean that the violet cloud peach had surpassed the 6th grade. The sword spirits appeared above Jinshin's head. They also saw the barrier blocking their path, and were both overjoyed. Their gazes landed on the violet cloud peach tree behind the barrier. They were overjoyed at first, but their faces soon darkened. They said, "Master, that's a 9th grade violet cloud peach. A single one can increase your cultivation by 4,500 years, and a single one can allow a mortal to become an immortal. However, we can't obtain this violet cloud peach at all." Ziying's voice was filled with pity. Jinshin immediately ravished with joy when he heard that it was a 9th grade violet cloud peach. However, Ziying's words left him stunned. "You can't obtain it? Why can't you obtain it?" "Master, do you see the barrier condensed from Xianhuang Qi before you? We call this barrier a domain. Most of the Xianhuang microcosms that have appeared in the past do not possess a domain. There are extremely few Xianhuang microcosms that possess a domain. However, without any exceptions, all of the Xianhuang microcosms that possess a domain are of the highest grade. Moreover, our immortals world has another saying for the Xianhuang microcosms. Outside the domain is the mortal world, while inside the domain is the immortals world. This is because the domain is a higher level space that exists on the same level as the immortals world. The Xianhuang beasts, they're basically all at the immortal tier, which is incomparable to the immortals world. There are even some Xianhuang beast kings that have reached the level of immortal monarchs or even immortal emperors, Ziying explained sternly. Chapter 1295. And in the history of our immortals world, there have even been a few immortal exalt Xianhuang microcosm that have given birth to immortal exalt Xianhuang beast emperors. They're extremely powerful, where even a few immortal emperors of the immortals world have died before them. Since this Xianhuang microcosm is the highest grade of microcosm, even if there aren't any immortal exalt Xianhuang beast emperors, there will definitely be a few immortal monarchs and immortal emperor Xianhuang beast kings. Master, you definitely can't enter with your current strength, or you'll die for sure. This is because you can only enter and not leave the Xianhuang microcosm. If you want to leave, you can only break through the barrier, but breaking through the barrier requires the cultivation of an immortal monarch, Ziying added. With that, Jinshin completely gave up on the idea of obtaining the 9th grade violet cloud peach. All he could do was stand outside the domain of Xianhuang Qi and stare at it. Although he knew that he might be able to enter and obtain the 9th grade violet cloud peach once his strength increased, it would no longer be as valuable to him by then. But the barrier doesn't seem to be as large as the elemental mountains. How can such powerful Xianhuang beasts exist in such a small world? Jinshin thought of another question that puzzled him, so he asked the sword spirits. Qing Suo could not help but giggle when he heard Jinshin's question. "Master, you don't know this, but this is equivalent to a spatial pocket. From the outside, the barrier is indeed nowhere near as large as the elemental mountains. However, it's an even vaster world inside." "I see." Jinshin came to a realization. He understood that this was the same principle as space rings. They seemed small on the surface, but they hid an extremely large space inside. At this moment, the space ring on Jinshin's finger suddenly flashed with golden light. A set of golden armor completely woven from thin strands suddenly flew out from the space ring, hovering in the air as it shone with dazzling light. The primordial god silk. Why did it come out of the space ring by itself? What's going on? Looking at the golden silk armor floating in front of him, Jinshin was startled and let out a cry of surprise, somewhat confused. He had possessed the primordial god silk for quite some time now, but it had always been an inanimate object in his hands. It lay quietly in his space ring, never moving at all. Yet now the primordial god silk had actually flown out of the space ring on its own. It behaved in such an unusual manner. At this moment, even the sword spirits were attracted by the primordial god silk's strange behavior. They all stared at the primordial god Silk, but none of them knew why. With the appearance of the primordial god Silk, the Xianhuang qi in the region up ahead actually began to pulse unstably. Afterwards, a strand of pure Xianhuang qi left the region and drifted through the sky. As soon as it approached the primordial god Silk, it was absorbed by the primordial god Silk. After it fused with the strand of sky earth energy, the primordial god Silk immediately emanated an unusual aura. It emanated dazzling golden light that illuminated the entire world and dyed it golden. The primordial god Silk is actually absorbing Xianhuang qi. This has never happened before in the immortals world. Is this related to the crisis of the world? Ziying and Qing Suo both stared at this in shock. What was happening right before them had completely overturned their understanding of the world. Jianshan stared at this in shock before his heart was filled with great joy. The primordial god Silk was extraordinarily tough. Even if he could unleash battle prowess on par with the Holy Emperor, he would not be able to damage it at all. However, the primordial god Silk's defenses were extremely limited. It could only block attacks from saint rulers. If it faced attacks from holy emperors, the Holy Emperor would not be able to damage the primordial god Silk at all, but the great force would be able to pass through the primordial god Silk and heavily injure the wearer. It could even cause the wearer to be shaken to death. As a result, Jianshan had never used the primordial god Silk after reaching the third layer of the chaotic body. Now that the primordial god Silk had absorbed the strand of Xianhuang qi, Jianshan could clearly sense that it was rapidly strengthening. Its presence was becoming more and more powerful as well. Soon after, a second and third strand of Xianhuang qi surged out of the boundary and was absorbed by the primordial god Silk, causing the primordial god Silk to shine even brighter. After absorbing 9 strands of Xianhuang qi, the primordial god Silk finally stopped. Its golden light gradually dimmed, and in just a few seconds, the light completely vanished. It returned to its original appearance and fell from the sky. Before the primordial god Silk could fall to the ground, Jianshan extended his hand with lightning-like speed and grabbed it. Immediately, he felt a strange sensation. It was an indescribable feeling, so Jianshan was unable to describe it. Jianshan studied the primordial god Silk in his hand attentively. He knew that the primordial god Silk had become slightly different after absorbing the Xianhuang qi, but he was unable to pinpoint the exact difference. However, there was one thing he could not doubt. The primordial god Silk was far, far more powerful than before. The sword spirits also stared at the primordial god Silk. After a moment of thought, Qing Suo said, "I never thought that the primordial god Silk would actually absorb Xianhuang qi. The primordial god Silk was created for the crisis of the world. So since it can absorb Xianhuang qi on its own, does that mean the Xianhuang qi has something to do with the crisis of the world? Or is it that the crisis of the world requires Xianhuang qi aside from the primordial god Silk as well?" Xing thought about it and said, "That's not necessarily the case. Xianhuang qi is a power of the highest level on the same level as chaotic force, but it's also completely different from chaotic force. It's also possible that the Xianhuang qi is extremely helpful to the primordial god Silk, which is why the primordial god Silk absorbs it. After all, the primordial god Silk in Master's hand is in its original form before the disaster transformation stage, so it possesses a certain level of intelligence. If it was after the disaster transformation stage, the sliver of intelligence would have vanished after the crisis of the world, leaving behind only an inanimate object. Naturally, it wouldn't absorb Xianhuang qi. If that's really the case, it would explain why the god artifacts forged from the primordial god Silk in the immortals world don't absorb Xianhuang qi when the Xianhuang microcosm appeared in the immortals world. Jianshan immediately gave up on the idea of asking the sword spirits when he heard their conversation. Even they could not give a definite answer, so they could only guess. Clearly, he would not be able to obtain an accurate answer, even if he asked the sword spirits. Jianshan did not want to waste any time. He stowed the primordial god Silk away and glanced at the 9th grade violet cloud peach in the world domain with great reluctance. He then turned around and left regretfully. He definitely could not enter the world domain. Without the strength of an immortal monarch, he would not be able to leave even if he entered. All he could do was stare at the ninth gray-violet cloud peach if he stayed. Afterwards, Jianshun and Tai Ta continued to wander through the forest, searching for Class 9 Xianhuang beasts and various heavenly resources. Although Jianshun possessed the strengthened primordial god silk, he still did not dare to provoke Class 10 Xianhuang beasts. After absorbing the Xianhuang Qi, the primordial god silk could only block attacks from Class 9 Xianhuang beasts. It was useless against Class 10 Xianhuang beasts. Over a dozen experts from the Holy Emperor sat in the air above the ruins of Mercenary City on the Tianyuan continent, without moving at all. They were like old monks in meditation. Although their eyes were closed, they paid close attention to the depths of Mercenary City. As long as anything happened there, they would contact the Grand Elder as quickly as possible. There were several dozen experts from the Holy Emperor scattered around the ruins of Mercenary City. They were all formation masters with great mastery over formations. They worked together to cast down killing formations. Although they knew that the killing formations were useless against Origin Realm experts, they did not become discouraged at all. They continued to do their very best. All the experts from the Holy Emperor on the Tianyuan continent had gathered in the miniature world of Mercenary City. Not only had Hao Wu come, but the president of the Radiant Saint Master Union had led all the Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters there as well. Even all the human experts from the Holy Emperor overseas had gathered there, so there were close to 1,000 people there. All of them were recuperating and preparing for a battle against the foreign experts at any time. At the same time, they were waiting for news from the sea race, the magical beasts, and the 100 races. I wonder if the sea race, the magical beasts, and the 100 races will send reinforcements, the Grand Elder said with some worry. The world of Forsaken Saints was just too powerful. Without the support of the other 3 races, it would be very difficult for the humans to fend off the world of Forsaken Saints. I wonder if Senior Houston of the Bloodsword sect has been found. A holy emperor in the crowd looked at the old man in blood-red robes beside him. The old man was the vice sect master of the Bloodsword sect, Jiang Wang. Jiang Wang shook his head. We've already contacted the old sect master using a secret technique, but we still haven't received a reply. I have no idea where the old sect master has gone either. Out of the 3 holy emperor, Great Elder Tian Jian is still refining the supreme divine hall. The Path Lord of Carnal Desires has already expressed that he will take action when the time comes. Only the old sect master of the Bloodsword sect, Houston, has gone missing. I hope he can make it back in time when the battle erupts. A great elder from a protector clan gently sighed. Chapter 1296. Several dozen formation masters at the level of the Holy Emperor all stopped what they were doing above the ruins of Mercenary City. They all flew into the air and stared down sternly. Soon after, a space gate ripped open in the sky, forming a huge gate that was over 10 meters long. It was a world gate that opened from the miniature world. All the experts of the Holy Emperor who had been resting in the miniature world of Mercenary City emerged from the world gate. They moved extremely quickly, leaving blurs in the air. They moved forward silently, all of them using their spatial abilities with great familiarity. In just a few seconds, almost 1,000 people hovered above the ruins of Mercenary City. Almost all of them were Holy Emperor experts with only a few saint rulers. All of them stared down below as they were extremely stern. Powerful pulses of energy pulsed from the depths of Mercenary City. They were extremely unstable, so everyone could clearly sense them. Oh no, they're already here. A clear, childlike voice rang out from the empty space. Xiaoling silently appeared in the air as she stared down nervously. Her body was no longer illusionary. She seemed to be made of flesh and blood, no different from a real person. Many people already knew the identity of the barrier spirit. All the Saint Kings present immediately calmed down with Xiaoling's appearance. Now, all of them knew that the barrier spirit was not as simple as they had imagined. Although the barrier around Mercenary City had vanished, the barrier spirit did not vanish because of that. At the same time, she had reached the second step of the Origin Realm, Returnance. The fact that the Tian Yuan continent possessed a returnance expert was a great comfort to everyone. Because of Shaoling, Mercenary City had become the representative of the Tian Yuan continent, surpassing the 10 protector clans. Barrier Spirit. In ancient times, City Lord Emotanyan once entered the world of Forsaken Saints and committed a massacre. Now that the people from the world of Forsaken Saints have come to our Tian Yuan continent, they will definitely take revenge. Once the people from the world of Forsaken Saints pass through the tunnel, please assist us in eliminating the invaders. We have to keep them in the tunnel and make time for Great Elder Tian Jian. A senior elder from the Holy Emperor respectfully bowed to Mercenary City. A venerable Saint King Elder of Mercenary City politely bowed to Shaoling. Shaoling was someone from the same generation as Mo Tianyan. At the same time, she was an Origin Realm expert who had surpassed Saint Emperor. She had silently protected Mercenary City for 1,000,000 years, so her status in the city was as great as that of an ancestor. I will. Shaoling firmly nodded. She replied firmly, but her face was still filled with uncontainable nervousness. It's a pity that although the barrier spirit possesses unparalleled strength, her mind is still immature. She's still a 12-year-old girl, so she probably doesn't have much battle experience. If she encounters an opponent of the same level, she'll probably be at a disadvantage. The Grand Elder sighed inside, but there was nothing he could do. All the experts gathered there were old monsters who had lived for over 1,000 years. They could tell with a single glance that the barrier spirit was still a little girl. She was immature, so they could not help but look at each other. They also felt worried inside. They had no idea just how much of her strength at returnance could she use. Boom! At this moment, a terrifying pulse of energy appeared from the depths of the ground. It shot up into the sky as a thick pillar of energy, causing the ground below to sink. An extremely deep chasm appeared. 80% of the various formations on the ground had been destroyed before they could even shine. The pillar of energy was extremely powerful. Even the expressions of Holy Emperor experts would change. None of the Holy Emperor experts gathered in the sky dared to receive it head-on. They all dodged, but there were still 2 Holy Emperor experts who were a little slower. They were immediately struck by the pillar of energy and were reduced to pieces. Even their souls were destroyed. Be careful. This is the chaotic flow of energy in the tunnel. It came out with the people from the world of Forsaken Saints, Shaoling warned, but it was already too late. At the same time, several dozen tremendous presences emerged from the depths of the ground. The several dozen great perfection, Holy Emperor experts from the world of Forsaken Saints shot into the sky like arrows. All of them seemed rather horrible, but they gave off a presence that was different from the Tian Yuan continent. As soon as the great perfection, Holy Emperor experts from the world of Forsaken Saints flew into the sky, they discovered almost 1,000 people gathered in the surroundings. They immediately became slightly stunned. They could tell with a single glance that basically all the people gathered there were Holy Emperor experts. There were not even a lot of them at great perfection. They were insignificant figures in their world of Forsaken Saints. In reality, they had already been prepared to be killed by the Origin Realm experts of this world before they had entered the tunnel. They had even imagined that they would be surrounded by the densely packed Holy Emperor experts as soon as they left the tunnel. However, they had never thought that they would see so many Holy Emperor experts who were weaker than them. They did not even see a single Holy Emperor expert. Just when the leading great perfection Holy Emperor from the world of Forsaken Saints wanted to say something, someone called out from the crowd, "They're all Holy Emperor experts at great perfection. They must be the vanguard to scout us out. Don't let them leave alive. Kill them." Almost 1,000 experts from the Tian Yuan continent struck out at the same time. Various powerful attacks and saint-tier battle skills were used at the same time, striking the great perfection Holy Emperor experts from the world of Forsaken Saints mercilessly. The great perfection experts from the world of Forsaken Saints all dodged, but the attacks from the Tian Yuan continent were just too concentrated. In just a single clash, half of them were injured while several of them died on the spot. Let's leave. The great perfection Holy Emperor from the world of Forsaken Saints all called out. They took out the jade the Spirit King had given them and wanted to use the spatial force within to flee. However, at this moment, Xiao Ling struck out. With a gentle wave of her hand, a white light immediately appeared, quickly sweeping toward the group of people from the world of Forsaken Saints. Chapter 1297. The battle that erupted above Mercenary City ended even more quickly. It settled down in the blink of an eye. The several dozen great perfection, holy emperor from the world of Forsaken Saints had left behind over 30 corpses. Only a little more, and they would have been wiped out. On the human side, only 2 holy emperors have been accidentally struck by the streams of energy that surged out from the tunnel, killing them off. The clash this time finally allowed the people who had never seen an Origin Realm expert before to witness the terror of an Origin Realm expert. Just a simple wave of the barrier spirit's hand was enough to cause over 20 holy emperors' bodies to explode. They died without a complete corpse. Just how terrifying was that? Immediately, everyone's gazes toward Xiao Ling changed. They were filled with deep fear. In this age where there were very few holy emperors, great perfection, holy emperor was an existence that stood at the apex of the pyramid. They were one of the few supreme experts in the world, yet they were as fragile as tofu before the barrier spirit. This was an extremely great shock to everyone present. At the same time, everyone realized that although the barrier spirit still had the temperament of a little girl, she did not show any mercy when she fought. She was not afraid of killing. The Grand Elder of Mercenary City shifted his gaze away from Xiao Ling with great difficulty. He sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. Afterward, he looked around and said with a deep voice, "That brother was right. Since the world of Forsaken Saints has Origin Realm experts, their strength is definitely not limited to this. The group of holy emperors at great perfection that came from the world of Forsaken Saints is probably just their vanguard. They've come to understand the strength of our Tian Yuan continent. Once they understand our strength, they'll launch a large-scale attack. As a result, we can't let the great perfection holy emperor leave the Tian Yuan continent alive. We have to kill them no matter what the price is." The Grand Elder is correct. If we let them go back, the world of Forsaken Saints will learn of our strength. If they learn that we're so weak, they definitely won't be afraid and will launch a large-scale invasion. As a result, we can't let the scouts from the world of Forsaken Saints live. Only by killing them can we prevent our strength from being exposed. The world of Forsaken Saints definitely won't dare to act recklessly before they learn of our strength, the Grand Elder said with a deep sigh. A holy emperor added as soon as the Grand Elder finished speaking. He was a great elder of the Protector clans and was also a holy emperor at great perfection. There's no time to lose. Please ask the people of the 10 Protector clans to use a secret technique to search the entire Tian Yuan continent and find traces of those people. Third Elder, immediately send people to notify the 100 races, magical beasts, and sea race that a holy emperor at great perfection has escaped from the world of Forsaken Saints and is extremely likely to enter their territories. Tell them to pay attention. I think the people of the 3 races will believe the truth of this matter once they see the experts from the world of Forsaken Saints, the Grand Elder of Mercenary City said sternly, as if he was a commander giving orders. Although many people from the Protector clans were displeased, none of them dared to show it. They all followed the Grand Elder's orders and used an ancient secret technique to search the entire Tian Yuan continent. Although Mercenary City had been destroyed, its strength had increased instead of decreasing. Now that an Origin Realm expert had appeared, just Tianjin alone was enough to suffocate them, let alone the barrier spirit. Under the secret technique of the Protector clans, the expert from the world of Forsaken Saints on the Tian Yuan continent were unable to hide at all. They were all found, and immediately, a few holy emperor at great perfection formed a hunting party to hunt them down. At the same time, the emperor armaments of the Protector clans were all moved over. Other than the Tyrant's Blade School, the emperor armaments of the other 9 Protector clans all arrived in Mercenary City. The emperor armaments all took different forms. They were a blade, a sword, a spear, a stab, a hammer, and a horsetail whisk. The horsetail whisk was the emperor armament of the Pure Heart Pavilion. However, although they all took different forms, they were all extraordinarily powerful. A holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints stumbled out of a barren mountain range on the Tian-Yuan continent. He quickly glanced around and only let out a sigh of relief when he discovered that there was no one there. He said, "I've finally made it out. Strange, why aren't there any holy emperors here?" The holy emperor at great perfection was filled with doubt when he thought back to what he had just seen. He knew that there were origin realm experts in this world, but he also knew that if they did not want to expose themselves, he would not be able to sense them even if they stood right in front of him. As a result, he mainly observed the holy emperor. Suddenly, the holy emperor at great perfection became stunned. He suddenly raised his head to look at the sky and became surprised. A while later, he involuntarily exclaimed, "There's actually no origin energy here, and the energy of the world is even thinner than our world of forsaken saints. I know now. I finally know why I haven't seen any holy emperor. Becoming a holy emperor in an environment like this is extremely difficult." The holy emperor immediately became overjoyed when he realized this. Such strength was nothing before his world of forsaken saints. Our sacred hall only needs to send a small group of holy emperors to conquer this world. Although there's no origin energy here and the energy of the world is thin, the environment here is much more beautiful than our world of forsaken saints. The holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints excitedly said. At this moment, a space gate rapidly ripped open 100 meters away. 3 holy emperor at great perfection stepped out side by side as they coldly stared at the holy emperor. The expression of the holy emperor at great perfection changed drastically. He immediately fled into the distance without saying anything else. After him, the 3 saint kings at great perfection immediately chased after him. They were both at great perfection, but the great perfection expert from the world of forsaken saints had left behind a part of his soul in the soul jade, so his strength was drastically reduced. As a result, he was no longer as powerful as the peak experts of the Tian-Yuan continent. The great perfection expert from the world of forsaken saints was caught up very quickly. After an intense battle, the great perfection expert from the world of forsaken saints was defeated and killed off. This happened many times on the Tian-Yuan continent. The fleeing holy emperor at great perfection from the world of forsaken saints were chased by the experts of the Tian-Yuan continent until they had nowhere to run. In the end, they were all wiped out, and only one of them was left alive, who was taken to Mercenary City. However, they could only clean up this region of the Tian-Yuan continent. The human saint kings on the Tian-Yuan continent were powerless to deal with the experts who had fled to other parts of the continent. An expert from the world of forsaken saints had been transported to the Arctic tundra by the Space Force within the Soul Jade. As soon as he fell out, he immediately shivered. The temperature there was so low that even he, a holy emperor at great perfection, struggled to endure it. Chapter 1298. This was a vast expanse of yellow sand. As far as the eye could see, the yellow sand was like a sea connecting the heavens and the earth. It was completely barren, without the slightest bit of life to speak of. The sun shone brightly in the blue sky, and the high temperature baked the yellow sand until it was boiling hot. The heavens and the earth were like a large furnace. At this moment, the space above a mountain of yellow sand began to ripple. Immediately, a middle-aged man fell out of space. He was in a horrible state, and he gave off an aura that was completely different from the surroundings. "I've finally made it out." The middle-aged man glanced around and immediately exhaled deeply. He was one of the several dozen great perfection holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints. "I need to hide carefully in the next few days. I can't be exposed. I have to gather all the information here and report it to the Spirit King," thought the middle-aged man. As soon as he thought of the Spirit King, his eyes immediately became filled with undisguised admiration and respect. At this moment, the sand several kilometers away began to churn violently. A huge rock giant rose up from the ground. It seemed like it had been hiding there for a long time. Suddenly, it stood up causing it to grow taller and taller. It only stopped after reaching a height of 100 meters. An earthen yellow light shone around it as it gave off a tremendous presence. The holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints stared at the rock giant that seemed to have grown out of the ground in a daze. He was greatly shocked because he had never sensed that there was a rock giant at great perfection hiding nearby. The rock giant seemed to be completely composed of large rocks that were tightly connected. It did not have any flesh or blood, but it gave off a tremendous presence of life. Its facial features were distinct and its eyes shone brightly. It stared at the holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints without blinking at all. Surprise and doubt filled its eyes. A while later, the rock giant spoke in human tongue. It said with a deep, muffled voice, "You're not one of the 100 races. You're not a human, nor are you a magical beast, nor are you a sea race. You're not a person of our world." With that, the rock giant's presence skyrocketed. He took a step forward, and the ground shook with each step. He aggressively approached the holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints. The holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints was stern. He did not want to clash with the rock giant. He immediately ripped open a space gate in an attempt to flee. He could already sense that the rock giant was an expert at the same level of cultivation as him. They were both at the great perfection of the holy emperor. If he was in peak condition, he would obviously choose to fight the rock giant, but he had left behind a portion of his soul in the world of forsaken saints before exhausting himself through the tunnel. His strength had plummeted, so he was no longer the rock giant's opponent. The stone giant in the distance attacked from afar, and the yellow sand below the spatial gate immediately flew up. In the blink of an eye, the sand condensed into stone pillars, emitting powerful energy fluctuations as they shot into the sky at lightning speed. Boom! The stone pillars pulsed with terrifying energy and exploded as soon as they approached the spatial gate. The holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints did not even have the time to stop them. The terrifying energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, causing space to distort. The spatial gate that the holy emperor had constructed collapsed before it could even form. The holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints was very decisive. Seeing how he could not escape through the spatial gate, he switched to flight. He fused with the surrounding space and used spatial force to quickly flee, covering over 10 kilometers in a single instance. He knew that he could not remain here for long. More experts would arrive very soon. The rock giant did not pursue him. He crouched down with great difficulty and directly stabbed his right arm into the sand below. Several dozen kilometers away, the holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints immediately rejoiced inside when he saw that the rock giant did not pursue him. However, at this moment, a stone hand several dozen meters long suddenly emerged from the sand. It flickered with a yellow light and struck toward him with a tremendous and heavy energy. Caught off guard, the holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints was struck by the stone hand. He vomited a mouthful of blood and was immediately blown away. However, he stabilized himself very soon. He avoided the rock giant and avoided it flying off in another direction. The entire land is my power. You can't escape. The stone giant's deep voice clearly rang out from several dozen kilometers away. Afterward, his left arm stabbed into the sand as well. Just when the holy emperor had fled several dozen kilometers away, he was blocked by the rock giant's left arm that had suddenly emerged from the sand. He was injured once again, and his injuries were even heavier. The rock giant's two arms seemed to be able to ignore the limits of distance. They could be extended no matter how far away the enemy was, as if he knew that it was impossible for him to escape from the rock giant at such a height. The expert from the world of forsaken saints charged into the sky. He refused to believe that the rock giant's arms could stop him from flying 10,000 meters in the air. However, as soon as he took to the air, a green streak of light shot down from even higher up with unbelievable speed. It was a 3-meter-long green arrow that was completely condensed from energy. It had completely locked onto the holy emperor's presence and was filled with cold, killing intent. It was unavoidable. Spurt. The arrow pierced the expert's chest, immediately causing him to wail out in pain. His face immediately became rather haggard, as if he was ill. Not only had the green arrow heavily injured him, but it had also taken away a portion of his vitality. A woman shrouded in green light slowly descended from the sky. She didn't look very old, only around 20 years old. She wore a long dress, and her green hair draped over her shoulders. She was devastatingly beautiful, but her eyes were filled with coldness. Her expression was holy, and there was a sense of majesty exuding from her body. However, a pair of 3-meter-long wings slowly flapped on her back. The green light was mixed with an azure light. Her feathers were soft and extremely pretty. She was an elf. She wielded a simple and exquisite wooden bow. It was covered in simple inscriptions, but there were no arrows. The holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints slammed into the sand below and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. As soon as he stood up, the space in the sky began to pulse unstably. 4 space gates opened at the same time, and 4 experts walked out. They surrounded the holy emperor from all 4 directions. Tremendous presences revolved around the 4 of them. They were all at great perfection of the holy emperor. The one standing in the east was a burly man who was more than 3 meters tall. He was carrying a mace that was even longer than he was tall. His upper body was bare, and he wore a tight pair of shorts. The muscles on his body were bulging, giving people a strong visual impact. He was an expert of the berserk warriors of the 100 races. His battle prowess was extremely great, and after going berserk, his battle prowess would skyrocket. He would be invincible among those of the same level. Some of the more talented ones could even fight above their level of cultivation. It was rumored that the bloodline of the berserk warriors was the closest to that of the war gods. The person in the west was a short old man. He was sturdy and tanned. His arms were extremely thick and possessed explosive strength. The old man was an expert of the dwarves. Chapter 1299. Standing on the south side was a burly man who was more than 2 meters tall. His body was covered with thick black hair, and he was only wearing a pair of shorts. The burly man looked like both a human and a wolf. He had the features of a human, but at the same time, he had the characteristics of a wolf. His 5 slender fingers were vigorous and powerful. He was an expert of the werewolves of the 100 races. They were existences between wolves and humans. They were not humans, nor were they magical beasts. Their battle prowess was very powerful, no weaker than magical beasts. Very few humans of the same level of strength were their opponents. They were one of the most powerful races among the 100 races. To the north stood a skinny old woman. She had a hunchback and a bun on her head. She seemed extremely old, but 2 balls of green flames leapt about her eyes. They were like willow, the wisps, filled with a demonic aura. The old woman was an expert of the fire demons. She was born with the ability to control fire, but the flames she controlled were not regular flames. Instead, they were green demonic flames. These flames did not have any temperature and could not burn anything. They could only burn away life force. Boom, boom, boom. The earth trembled rhythmically as the stone giant in the distance strode towards them. Every step he took covered a distance of several kilometers. His speed was extremely fast. A violent wind pressure descended from the sky. The elven expert shot down as a green streak of light with her wooden bow. She hovered 10 meters above the ground. The 6 experts of the 100 races studied the holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints. They were all curious before frowning. As expected, this person is not from our world. He is from another world. The aura he exudes is not from our world. Could it be that the news brought by the messenger of the human race is true? The elf asked in a deep voice. His face was solemn. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. I think we should take this person back to the War God Hall immediately, said the old woman from the fire demons. Her voice was hoarse and extremely unpleasant. The dwarf chuckled. We received a message from the humans not long ago. They said that someone from another world has come and told us to be prepared. I thought it would be some impressive expert, so I even brought the Heavens Guard with me. In the end, it's just a holy emperor at great perfection. If we had known earlier, we wouldn't have needed to muster so many people. Let's go back to the War God Hall first. With that, the dwarf grabbed the Holy Emperor and placed him on his shoulder before leaving through a space gate with the elves, berserkers, fire demons, and werewolves. They only left behind a 100-meter-tall rock giant. At the center of the wasteland continent, on the War God Mountain, there was a majestic divine hall. It was like a primordial beast, quietly creeping on the ground. It gave off an invisible pressure. The divine hall was the spiritual leader of the 100 races, as well as the highest authority of the 100 races. It was where their faith lay, the War God Hall. Several dozen experts of the 100 races gathered in the majestic War God Hall. All of them were at least at the 5th heavenly layer of the Holy Emperor. They possessed important statuses in the War God Hall. They stood in a circle. At the center was the captured Holy Emperor from the world of Forsaken Saints. He lay on the ground like a pile of mud. He was haggard. Not only was he heavily injured, but he had also been restrained by a mysterious secret technique, reducing him to the level of an ordinary person despite his great strength. The 6 Holy Emperor at great perfection had all gathered near the expert from the world of Forsaken Saints. The elves, fire demons, 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 and the 100-meter-tall rock giant had all gathered there. However, the rock giant had shrunk in size. Although his body was still composed of 10 pieces, he had shrunk to 3 meters tall. This person's presence is extremely strange. It really doesn't belong to our world. Has he really come from the world of Forsaken Saints? Is what the human envoys said true? That the world of Forsaken Saints really does exist? So what if the world of Forsaken Saints really does exist? They can't be that powerful. The Tianyuan continent is more than enough to deal with them. They just don't want to suffer heavy losses, which is why they want to exaggerate and make the world of Forsaken Saints seem so powerful, so that we, the 100 races, the magical beasts, and the sea race, can assist them. The experts of the War God Hall discussed the Holy Emperor from the world of Forsaken Saints. They came up with various theories, but after personally witnessing the Holy Emperor, they finally believed in the world of Forsaken Saints' existence. The Holy Emperor glanced around. He was a Holy Emperor at great perfection, so he could clearly see the strength of everyone present. The strongest were only Holy Emperors at great perfection, and there were even a few who were at great perfection. Most of them were below great perfection. There was not a single Saint Emperor, which immediately caused a sliver of mockery to appear in his eyes. He said, "I never thought that you'd be so weak, not even having a single Saint Emperor. You probably don't have any Origin Realm experts either. However, this world lacks Origin energy, and the energy of the world is so thin, so it makes sense that you haven't given birth to Saint Emperors. Our Sacred Hall only needs a single Saint Emperor to flatten such a weak force." What's he saying? An expert of the 100 races asked in confusion. He did not understand what the Holy Emperor was saying at all. This is the language of the world of Forsaken Saints. Let's communicate with his soul, the elf said with a clear voice. Afterward, all the experts present released their souls and began to communicate with the Holy Emperor. Very soon, the expressions of all the experts of the 100 races drastically changed. The dwarf almost leapt up. He cried out, "What did you say? A single Holy Emperor's group? Holy Emperors can form groups? Just how many Holy Emperors do you have?" The Holy Emperor's disdain became even heavier. He coldly said, "We have countless Holy Emperors. Once the space tunnel stabilizes, the 500 Holy Emperors gathered on the world mountains will all come. We'll only need a single day to flatten your world." What? 500 Holy Emperors? Impossible. How can you have so many Holy Emperors? It's uncountable. You're probably exaggerating. The experts of the 100 races were greatly shocked. Shock filled their eyes. The strength of the world of Forsaken Saints filled them with dread. The Holy Emperor possessed countless experts. 500 Holy Emperors had already come through the space tunnel. Even in ancient times, it would have been difficult to stop them. Not to mention, the 4 races of this world were nowhere near as powerful as they were in ancient times. I've already investigated the strength of this world. My mission is complete. Before long, the army of my world of forsaken saints will descend. We will meet again. The holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints sneered before using a secret technique to shatter his own soul. He collapsed on the ground dead. Chapter 1300. No one could stop the holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints from committing suicide. The experts of the 100 races had never thought that a holy emperor at great perfection would commit suicide in such a straightforward manner. The atmosphere in the War God Hall became extremely heavy. Several dozen experts of the 100 races stood there sternly. The news they had received from the Saint King had almost suffocated them. They had all been deeply shocked by the experts from the world of forsaken saints. The world of forsaken saints will launch a large-scale invasion soon. Looks like they want to conquer our world. The humans probably won't be the only ones affected. The magical beasts, the 100 races, and even the sea race won't be able to remain unaffected. What should we do now? A white-haired old man asked after quite a while. He was very solemn. He was a hall elder of the War God Hall, the holy emperor at great perfection. If what this person from the world of forsaken saints said is true, the strength of the world of forsaken saints is not something any of us can fend off. They possess so many holy emperors. Even if all the experts of our 4 races work together, we won't be their opponent, the old woman said. Her voice was hoarse, and her face was sunken. She was also a hall elder of the War God Hall. In my opinion, let's put aside the grievances between the humans and magical beasts for now and work together with the humans to deal with the threat of the world of forsaken saints. Otherwise, the 100 races will probably cease to exist in the near future, said a woman who seemed to be in her early 20s. The one who spoke was a woman who looked to be in her 20s. She was tall and slender, and her appearance was devastatingly beautiful. She naturally exuded a sacred and noble aura. She was a powerhouse of the elf clan. Although she looked young, she was actually thousands of years old. The several dozen holy emperors gathered in the War God Hall all fell silent. Their grievances with the magical beasts and humans ran deep, so it was indeed rather difficult for them to put aside their grievances and work together with the humans or magical beasts. However, the threat from the world of forsaken saints also suffocated them, making them extremely uneasy. Compared to the consequences of being wiped out, what's the big deal about enduring it? You've all heard what that person from the world of forsaken saints said. Once the world of forsaken saints comes to this world, there's an extremely high chance that our 100 races will be wiped out. I also suggest that we put aside our grievances with the humans and magical beasts for now and deal with the problem of the world of forsaken saints first. The one who spoke was an old man with a hunchback. His complexion was extremely old. He was also a perfect holy emperor and was close to the end of his life. At the same time, he was also the most senior person among all the temple elders and had a lot of prestige. The War God Temple was where the faith of the 100 races lay. At the same time, it was the holy power in the hearts of all the 100 races. At this moment, the dozens of holy emperor experts gathered here made up about a third of the 100 races. Moreover, a small half of them were at Paragons and came from different races. I agree with Elder Akeda and the white-veiled queen's suggestion. Let's put aside our grievances with the humans and magical beasts for now. A long while later, a hall elder finally expressed his opinion. With someone taking the lead, the matter became much smoother. Afterward, all the experts gathered there expressed their agreement. They all understood that the grievances of the past were nothing compared to the continuation of the 100 races. They can only put it aside for now. At the same time, the news that a group of people from the world of forsaken saints had fled the Tian-Yuan continent reached the Beast God Hall as quickly as possible. It attracted the attention of all the experts of the Beast God Hall. In order to find the holy emperor who might have fled to the Beast God continent as quickly as possible, a large group of Class 8 magical beasts were mobilized. They searched for the holy emperor of the world of forsaken saints. Even the 3 holy emperors of the Beast God continent were alarmed. The presences of the holy emperor from the world of forsaken saints were completely different from the world they were in. Even if they were in a crowd, they would be as dazzling as a lantern in the darkness. They would be recognized very easily. Under the personal mobilization of the three Holy Emperor of the Beast God Continent, the Holy Emperor of the world of Forsaken Saints who had fled to the Beast God Continent were all found very quickly. Other than a few who were killed on the spot, the remaining survivors were all taken to the Beast God Hall for interrogation. However, the three Holy Emperor of the Beast God Hall had never thought that the captured Holy Emperor of the world of Forsaken Saints would die before they could even be interrogated. They did not receive any information at all. However, even with that being the case, the three Holy Emperor of the Beast God Continent became extremely stern. This was because the world of Forsaken Saints really did exist, and it was extremely likely that they were as powerful as the human experts had said, possessing Origin Realm experts. The three Holy Emperor of the Beast God Hall gathered on the 98th floor. They all stared at the corpses of the foreign experts sternly. The Holy Emperor of the Peng clan, Sangxiong, said with a heavy voice, "This is no small matter. I'll go to the Tian Yuan continent immediately." With that, the Holy Emperor of the Peng clan, Sangxiong, faded away. This was an afterimage he had left behind. His true body had already appeared several thousand kilometers away in a single instance. Even without using a space gate, he moved with unbelievable speed. Kaiser and Lankiros did not move. Their faces were still abnormally pale. The two of them had been injured by Xiao Ling in the past, and they still had not recovered. The empty space above Mercenary City on the Tian Yuan continent was currently filled with people. Ever since the group of Holy Emperor experts from the world of Forsaken Saints had arrived, they had not returned to the miniature world of Mercenary City. They all stood guard outside, paying close attention to the situation of the tunnel below. Violent streams of energy would spew out from the tunnel from time to time, so the depths of the tunnel were extremely dangerous. Even the Holy Emperor at great perfection could die if he came in contact with the energy, so the Holy Emperor did not dare to venture into the depths of the tunnel. They could only stand guard outside. It's been so long since the news has spread. I wonder how the sea race, the magical beasts, and the 100 races will react. Will they send reinforcements? This matter doesn't just affect the safety of our Tian Yuan continent. It's also a threat to the other three races. We have to persuade them no matter what. We humans are just far too weak. It's a pity that there are just far too few experts in this era. If we possessed the glory of the ancient times, we wouldn't need to fear the world of Forsaken Saints. Didn't you hear the barrier spirits say that the world of Forsaken Saints is far more powerful than we expected? Even in ancient times, we probably wouldn't have been able to stop their invasion with just our strength. In the past, City Lord Mo Tianyin actually entered the world of Forsaken Saints alone and killed so many of their experts. He even killed quite a few reciprocity experts who had surpassed the Holy Emperor. That's unbelievable. City Lord Mo Tianyin really is the greatest human expert after all. He's probably already at the peak of the Origin Realm. If only City Lord Mo Tianyin was still here. City Lord Mo Tianyin would probably be able to flatten the entire world of Forsaken Saints all by himself. We wouldn't have to wait here in fear. I wonder when Great Elder Tianjin will be able to refine the Divine Hall. All our hopes are on the Divine Hall now. Everyone discussed. A holy emperor from the world of Forsaken Saints lay in the center with his eyes closed while the veiled heavenly enchantress sat beside him with her zither. The gazes of the surrounding holy emperors were filled with deep fear when they looked at the heavenly enchantress. At this moment, the space several kilometers away began to violently distort. A space gate rapidly formed, and immediately, dense water elemental energy permeated the area. Chapter 1301. It's the experts of the sea race. Fantastic, the reinforcements of a sea race have come. Just as I expected, the first reinforcements are the experts of the sea race. In ancient times, the 100 races had very deep grievances with our Tian Yuan continent. Several years ago, the experts of the Beast God continent invaded our Tian Yuan continent as well, engaging in an intense battle with us. Only the sea race and our Tian Yuan continent have never interfered with each other. The sea race expert at the front is actually a holy emperor. Fantastic. We have another holy emperor now. With the arrival of the experts of the sea race, the human experts gathered there immediately fell into an uproar. All of them stood up in the air and stared at the experts of the sea race in joy. Their eyes were filled with curiosity. The sea race was a rather mysterious race to some of them. This was because the sea race was enveloped by a protective barrier, preventing holy emperors from entering. As a result, many holy emperors had only heard of the existence of the sea race and had never personally seen them. Even more gazes gathered on the woman at the very front, who was enveloped by a layer of blue light. Their gazes were filled with undisguised respect. Although the woman did not give off any presence at all, many people could tell that she was a holy emperor. The Grand Elder of Mercenary City led a few holy emperor elders over in joy. Behind them were many other holy emperors, including important figures from the 10 protector clans and the various large organizations of the Tianyuan continent. I am the Grand Elder of Mercenary City. I welcome the esteemed guests of the sea race to our world of humans on behalf of the Tianyuan continent, the Grand Elder of Mercenary City said from afar. His voice was loud and clear. I'm a Hall Master of the Hall Poseidon, Yadrium. Greetings, everyone, the Hall Master of the Hall Poseidon said nonchalantly as she bathed in blue light. So it's the esteemed Hall Master of the Hall Poseidon. Poseidon has traveled such a great distance to come here, so we have failed to welcome you. Please forgive us, Hall Master of the Hall Poseidon. The Grand Elder greeted politely. The Great Elder of Mercenary City said some polite words before glancing behind the Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall. He was secretly shocked. The dozen or so experts behind the Hall Master all wore the same uniform, so he could tell with a single glance that they were all experts of the Sea Goddess Hall. However, what truly shocked the Grand Elder and the human Holy Emperor was that there were actually 4 Holy Emperor at great perfection among the experts of the sea race. The rest of them were basically at the 8th and 9th heavenly layer. Only 2 of them were at the 7th heavenly layer of the Holy Emperor. There was not a single person below the 7th heavenly layer. Although many of the human experts had never been to the sea race, they still had some understanding of the situation there. There were quite a few Holy Emperor experts among the sea race, but not all of them held positions in the Poseidon's Hall. Even with that being the case, the Hall of Poseidon could easily mobilize 4 Holy Emperor at great perfection and over a dozen experts at the 7th heavenly layer of the Holy Emperor. Such a powerful lineup was enough to rival the combined strength of several protector clans. At the same time, everyone understood that the Holy Emperor experts that Yadrium had brought with her were probably only the tip of the iceberg of the overall strength of the Hall Poseidon. This was because the overall strength of the sea race was far greater than the Tianyuan continent. They had far more saint rulers and holy emperors than the Tianyuan continent as well. There's no need to be so polite, Grand Elder. May I ask what the situation is with the world of Forsaken Saints? Yadrium gently asked. Blue light surged around her as dense water element permeated the surroundings. No one could see her true appearance while the experts of the hall silently followed behind her. The Grand Elder of Mercenary City quickly told Yadrium everything he knew about the world of Forsaken Saints without holding anything back. He emphasized that the world of Forsaken Saints possessed an extremely powerful origin realm expert that even the barrier spirit of Mercenary City could not deal with. Yadrium fell silent for a while. Only after quite a while did she say, I've already sensed the tunnel deep underground. The violent streams of energy are indeed extremely terrifying, and they flow from the world of Forsaken Saints to the Tianyuan continent. It's indeed extremely easy for people from the world of Forsaken Saints to come over, but if people from the Tianyuan continent want to go over, they'll have to go against the flow of energy. Even holy emperors will be in danger. Yadrium's voice was rather heavy. She then made her way toward the holy emperor that the experts of the Tianyuan continent had captured. Only now did the heavenly enchantress open her eyes. She slowly stood up and calmly studied Yadrium. She was the only person who did not receive the Hall Master of the Hall Poseidon. Yadrium naturally noticed the heavenly enchantress as well. She carefully studied the heavenly enchantress, and a sliver of surprise appeared in her eyes. She was actually unable to see through the heavenly enchantress' strength. The heavenly enchantress seemed to be shrouded in mist in her eyes. She was hazy, unable to see through her. Yadrium was secretly surprised. This was the first time she had encountered something so strange. Even the other two holy emperors of the Sea Realm did not give her such a feeling. Yadrium glanced at the heavenly enchantress deeply before looking at the unconscious holy emperor at great perfection. Esteemed Hall Master of the Hall Poseidon, this expert from the world of Forsaken Saints has been captured by us. Originally, we wanted to learn about the world of Forsaken Saints through him, but we never thought that he would know a secret technique that could shatter his own soul. Fortunately, Muir was able to control him in time with her zither and make him fall unconscious. The Grand Elder of Mercenary City explained to one side. A sliver of surprise flashed through Yadrium's eyes. She said she actually managed to control a holy emperor at great perfection so easily. Admirable, admirable. Even a holy emperor doesn't possess such a method. Hao hid in the crowd with a gloomy face. His emotions were mixed. He was indeed extremely surprised by his daughter's great accomplishments. He had even begun to doubt whether the cold and arrogant heavenly enchantress was his daughter. This was because his daughter's strength had increased at an astonishing rate in the past few years. Hao had already been there for several days. He had discovered his daughter's existence long ago, but he knew that his daughter still held a very deep grudge against him. She had never forgiven him as her father, so Hao had wanted to meet his daughter many times over the past few days, but he did not do so in the end. He knew that his daughter had discovered his existence long ago with her current strength, but she continued to ignore him. She even treated him like he was invisible, which made Hao Wu's heart ache. Chapter 1302. Yadrium's gaze paused on the Holy Emperor for a while. She asked, "May I ask if you've learned anything from this person? And just how powerful is the world of Forsaken Saints? Just how great is the disparity between us and them?" The Grand Elder of Mercenary City said, "Esteemed Hall Master of Hall Poseidon, this person from the world of Forsaken Saints almost destroyed his own soul. Although Shangwan Mu managed to stop him in time, we only have one chance to ask him. We'll need Shangwan Mu to explain the exact details." Yadrium immediately looked at Shangwan Mu. Out of all the human experts, Shangwan Mu was the only one she truly paid attention to. She did not even pay any attention to the Path Lord of Carnal Desires who hid in the shadows. Shangwan Mu glanced past the Holy Emperor and said indifferently and coldly, "This person from the world of Forsaken Saints has already used a secret technique to destroy his own soul. Although I've controlled his soul with my zither and made him fall asleep, his soul will continue to collapse once he wakes up. No one will be able to stop it. Even I can only slow down the rate at which his soul disperses with my zither. As a result, we only have one chance to ask him. It's very short, so we might not be able to get all the information about the world of Forsaken Saints from him. Right now, we need to wait for the experts of the 4 races to gather before we ask him, just in case someone says that we're exaggerating about the strength of the world of Forsaken Saints. If that's the case, let's wait for the experts of the magical beasts and the 100 races," Yadrium said gently. Yadrium gently said before falling silent. She stood there quietly with the other experts of the sea race. The place fell silent. Ever since the Hall Master of Hall Poseidon had arrived, the human experts gathered there all fell silent. They no longer whispered to each other. The Holy Emperor of the Protector clans and a few powerful ancient clans all glanced at the experts of the sea race. The sea race was an extremely powerful race. They all wanted to befriend the experts of Hall Poseidon. If they relied on the sea race, the status of their clans would definitely increase drastically. However, when they saw the indifferent expression of the oceanic species powerhouse, many of them retreated in the face of difficulties. Esteemed Hall Master Poseidon, have the Heaven Spirit Hall and the Serpent God Hall sent any reinforcements? The Grand Elder of Mercenary City asked a while later. He knew that the 3 holy emperors of the sea race were an extremely powerful force. If all 3 holy emperors of the sea race had come, They would have even more confidence in fending off the world of Forsaken Saints. I've already contacted the Heaven Spear Hall and the Serpent God Hall. I can't control whether they come or not, said Yadrium. At this moment, the space in the distance pulsed violently. Immediately, all the human experts gathered above Mercenary City looked over. The pulsing space attracted the attention of many people. At this moment, as long as the space pulsed, many people would become alarmed because it meant that more experts had come to reinforce them. As the space gate formed, a white-robed, ruddy old man walked out. He was one of the 3 holy emperors of the beast god continent, Sangxiong. Behind Sangxiong were over a dozen burly men. They were all burly, Class 8 magical beasts in human form. However, only 2 of them had reached great perfection as Holy Emperor. Even the others were slightly weaker than the experts of the sea race. So, it's the Peng Emperor. I am the Grand Elder of Mercenary City. Please forgive me for not coming out to greet you. The Grand Elder immediately went up to greet the Peng Emperor with a wide smile. Mercenary City had basically become the leader of the Tian Yuan continent now, so he obviously had to greet them as the Grand Elder. Although there had been some conflict between the Tian Yuan continent and the Beast God continent in the past, the threat of the world of Forsaken Saints was greater than anything else. They needed to put aside their grievances. Just as Sangxiong arrived, another space gate rapidly formed nearby. This space gate was much larger than the Oceanic tribes and the Orc tribes. It was 10 meters wide and 20 meters tall. Immediately, a boundless aura radiated from it. It was like a flash flood, and its momentum was shocking. It caused the winds to surge and clouds to surge. Silhouettes of people came out of the spatial gate one after another. They all had different appearances. There were handsome elves with wings on their backs, short but very strong dwarves, burly, dark-skinned berserk warriors, and stone golems that seemed to be completely made of stone. Many human experts smiled happily when they saw the arrival of these people. Now that all 4 races had gathered, the pressure they faced on the Tian Yuan continent had decreased by a lot. I never thought that the 100 races would actually send so many people, a human exclaimed. There were quite a few people from the 100 races this time. There were over 200 Holy Emperor experts, and many of them had reached great perfection. This was basically a third or even half of the 100 races' strength. Looks like the 100 races want to throw their lives on the line against the world of Forsaken Saints. They've actually brought out everything they have. A protector of the Protector clan side. A Grand Elder of a Protector family exclaimed. Many of them could sense the ripples of power from the experts of the 100 races, and there was more than one of them. Do the 100 races want to throw their lives on the line against the world of Forsaken Saints? Or do they want to use this opportunity to invade our Tian Yuan continent? They've actually brought so many forbidden artifacts. These are the treasures of their clans, a human expert muttered. All of them felt that the 100 races were throwing their lives on the line this time. They were nowhere near as shrewd as the sea race and the magical beasts. They had only sent over a dozen people to scout the situation. They would only send reinforcements after personally witnessing the strength of the world of Forsaken Saints. The Grand Elder of Mercenary City hurriedly went up to greet them warmly. He had completely forgotten that the 100 races had attacked Mercenary City not long ago. The Hall Elders at the great perfection of the 100 races all returned the greeting to the Grand Elder of Mercenary City, but many of them looked at the magical beasts with uncontainable anger. The true enemy of the 100 races was not the Tian Yuan continent, but the Beast God continent. This was because the Beast God continent had been occupied by the 100 races in ancient times. Later on, the Winged Tiger led the magical beast to attack the continent, driving the 100 races out. This was why the 100 races had invaded the Tian Yuan continent. As a result, although the humans and the 100 races had engaged in an earth-shaking war in ancient times, resulting in heavy casualties on both sides, the 100 races' hatred for the Tian Yuan continent was not as deep as imagined. After all, they were the ones who had invaded the Tian Yuan continent first. However, the experts of the 100 races clearly understood that the matter of the world of Forsaken Saints was urgent and that it was not the time to fuss over the grievances between different races. As a result, they all glared at the magical beasts furiously, but no conflict erupted. Chapter 13:03. At that moment, the atmosphere became rather heavy due to the arrival of the people from the 100 races and magical beasts. Even the human experts sensed it, but none of them said anything. They all stared at the experts from the 100 races and magical beasts. Since the people of the 4 races are all here, let's wake up the person from the world of Forsaken Saints and learn about the strength of the world of Forsaken Saints from him, Poseidon said at this moment, breaking the heavy atmosphere. Esteemed Hall Master Poseidon is right. The matter of the world of Forsaken Saints is urgent, so please take action, Heavenly Enchantress, said the Pavilion Master of the Pure Heart Pavilion. Shangwan I'll be troubling you with this matter because only you have the ability out of all of us, said the Grand Elder of the mercenary group. Although he knew that the Heavenly Enchantress was far stronger than him, he still directly referred to her by her name. This was because the elders of Mercenary City were acquainted with the Heavenly Enchantress long ago. They were all her seniors. Whether it was the magical beasts or the 100 races, all of them shifted their attention when the world of Forsaken Saints was mentioned. They all stared at the Holy Emperor from the world of Forsaken Saints. Quite a few of them also stared at the Heavenly Enchantress for a while. They could not help but become stunned. Although the Heavenly Enchantress wore a veil and her face could not be seen, it was unable to hide her beauty. However, without any exception, no one could tell the Heavenly Enchantress' strength. The experts of the 100 races did not say anything. They had captured a holy emperor from the world of Forsaken Saints on the Wasteland continent and had obtained some shocking information from him. However, they did not plan on announcing this information right now. They wanted to see if the information they had obtained from the Holy Emperor from the Tian Yuan continent was the same as what they knew. The Heavenly Enchantress nodded at the Grand Elder of Mercenary City before holding her zither with one hand. Her slender fingers gently stroked the strings, and immediately a gentle, pleasant sound rang out. The sound of the zither was extremely beautiful, like the music of immortals. It was filled with a boundless charm, intoxicating and soul-stealing. All the experts of the 4 races gathered there were heavily affected by the sound of the zither. They could not help but fall into a trance due to the sound of the zither. However, they all returned to their senses in the next moment. As soon as they thought about what had just happened, they immediately became covered in cold sweat. The humans remained relatively calm. They had already witnessed just how terrifying the Heavenly Enchantress' strength was. However, the experts of the sea race, the 100 races, and the magical beasts were all astounded. Their gazes toward the Heavenly Enchantress were filled with shock, and some of them even felt fear. There were hall elders among them who were at great perfection of the Holy Emperor. Just how terrifying was the sound of the zither, if even experts like that were affected by it. They also knew that the sound of the zither was not targeted at them, or none of them would have been able to endure it. The Holy Emperor of the Peng clan, Sangxiong, suddenly snapped open his eyes. He stared at the Heavenly Enchantress in some disbelief as a sliver of shock appeared in his eyes. Even the Hall Master of the Poseidon Hall, Yadrium, stared at the Heavenly Enchantress back again. She stared at her deeply. This was because even the Holy Emperor of the Magical Beasts and the Hall Master of the Poseidon Hall, Yadrium, had lost control of their souls. Who is this person? Her mastery of soul attacks is actually so great. Why have I never heard of her before? Sangxiong thought inside as a sliver of fear appeared in his eyes. Magical beasts were more powerful than humans in battle, but they also had a weakness, which was that their souls were weaker than humans. All experts skilled in soul attacks were people that magical beasts feared the most. The Holy Emperor of the world of Forsaken Saints finally awakened slowly under the influence of the Heavenly Enchantress zither. However, his eyes were no longer clear. Instead, they had become empty. His soul had been completely controlled by the terrifying sound of the zither. As soon as the expert from the world of Forsaken Saints awakened, his soul rapidly collapsed. He had already used a secret technique to destroy his own soul, so he could only stop the collapse of his soul when he fell unconscious. Once he woke up, No one present could stop his soul from collapsing. Even the heavenly enchantress could only slow down the rate at which his soul was collapsing, but she could not last for very long. The heavenly enchantress asked many questions about the world of forsaken saints. The holy emperor of the world of forsaken saints told her everything he knew, answering all of her questions. All the experts of the 4 races present heard him. A few seconds later, the holy emperor's soul completely collapsed. His body was reduced to an icy cold state. However, the heavenly enchantress managed to learn a lot from the holy emperor in that short amount of time. She gained an even more precise understanding of the world of forsaken saint strength. Saint rulers and holy emperors were as numerous as ants. The holy emperor possessed countless experts. Other than that, there were over 40 origin realm experts. 33 of them were at receival, 8 were at returnance, and there was an even more terrifying spirit king. The Saint King's corpse fell from the sky, while the large group of people in the air fell silent. All of them had become speechless from shock. All of them were extremely stern, and some of them had even become sheet white, devoid of any blood. The strength of the world of forsaken saints had completely exceeded what they had imagined. It was a world that they could not contend against. Even in ancient times, the 4 groups would not be the world of forsaken saints' opponent, even if they worked together. In ancient times, there were 4 supreme experts as well as many holy emperors. However, even if the 4 races were added together, the number of holy emperors was innumerable. The strength of the world of forsaken saints had reached an extremely terrifying level compared to the humans, magical beasts, sea race, and 100 races. We can't let the people from the world of forsaken saints come. We have to stop them no matter what the price is, the Grand Elder said in a heavy voice. If the world of forsaken saints was so powerful, it would be a disaster for them if they came to the Tian-Yuan continent. Chapter 1304. After learning the exact strength of the world of forsaken saints, the 4 races treated it as an apocalypse. The world of forsaken saints was just too powerful. Once the foreign experts arrived on the Tian-Yuan continent, the 4 races would be treated as slaves even if they were not wiped out. The esteemed Hall elders of the War God Hall immediately returned to the wasteland continent and began to gather all the forces of the 100 races. The holy emperor of the Peng clan, Sangxiong, left behind a magical beast and personally hurried back to the Beast God Hall. He told the other 2 holy emperor of the magical beasts everything he knew as soon as possible. The hall master of the Poseidon Hall, Yadrium, sent out a few messages as well. She began to gather the forces of the Poseidon Hall and sent another message to the hall master of the Heaven Spirit Hall and the hall master of Dragon God Temple. Before long, over 200 holy emperor experts of the 100 races arrived on the Tian-Yuan continent through a space gate. In order to fend off the invasion of the foreign world, the 100 races had mobilized 2/3 of their forces. A large group of magical beasts hurried over from the Beast God continent as well. They were all Class 8 magical beasts, numbering over 600. Even Lankiros and Kaiser had come. There were far more magical beasts than the 100 races. The Beast God continent was more powerful than the 100 races and the Tian-Yuan continent. Not only were there holy emperor experts, but even the holy emperor and saint rulers were the same. The Class 8 magical beasts that had hurried over from the Beast God continent probably only amounted to half of the total number of magical beasts on the continent. Even the sea race had sent over 400 holy emperor experts. They were all experts from the territory of the Poseidon Hall. There was not a single person from the Heaven Spirit Hall or the Serpent God Hall. With the support of the 100 races, magical beasts, and sea race, the strength of the Tian-Yuan continent rapidly increased as well. Over 2,000 holy emperor experts had gathered in Mercenary City now, and there were 5 holy emperor experts. Only the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall, the Hall Master of Dragon God Temple, and the old sect master of the Bloodsword sect, Houston, were not present. The Bloodsword sect was searching for Houston with everything they had, but no matter what they did, they could not find any traces of Houston. It was as if Houston had suddenly vanished from the Tian-Yuan continent. The vice sect master of the Bloodsword sect, Jiang Wang, was secretly worried as well. now that something so major had happened on the Tian Yuan continent. The two most important people of the Bloodsword sect were not present. Not only had the old sect master Houston vanished, but even the current sect master, Jinshen, could not be contacted either. Kaiser and Lankiros stood there with rather pale faces. Everyone present could sense that their presences were rather unstable. Clearly, they were injured. Kaiser glanced past Xiao Ling in some fear. His lips moved slightly as if he wanted to say something, but he said nothing in the end. Lankiros was the same. After a moment of hesitation, he said to the Grand Elder of Mercenary City, "The Holy Emperor's battle prowess is extremely important to fend off the invasion of the world of Forsaken Saints. We need to return to our peak condition before the world of Forsaken Saints appears again, or we won't be of much use. It's just that a strand of origin energy is wreaking havoc in our bodies right now, so we need to use half of our energy to suppress it. We probably won't be able to use even 50% of our strength." The Grand Elder glanced past Kaiser and Lankiros and smiled mysteriously. He knew that the two holy emperors had once been injured by the barrier spirit of Mercenary City and had yet to recover. He only wanted Xiao Ling to remove the remnant origin energy in their bodies, but he was too embarrassed to make it too obvious. The Grand Elder politely bowed to Xiao Ling, who hovered in the air, and said, "Esteemed barrier spirit, can you remove the origin energy from the two seniors so that they can return to their peak condition and strengthen our defenses?" Xiao Ling frowned and stared at the two holy emperors with some dissatisfaction. She said angrily, "Humph, who asked you to bully Big Brother? If it weren't for the fact that the bad people from the world of Forsaken Saints were coming this time, Xiao Ling wouldn't have bothered with you at all." With that, Xiao Ling waved her hand, and the strand of origin energy within Kaiser and Lankiros flew out. They immediately flew out of their bodies and were taken back by Xiao Ling. Kaiser and Lankiros immediately felt their bodies lighten. The strand of origin energy that had left them helpless had finally left their bodies. The two of them immediately rejoiced. Without any hesitation, they immediately sat down and began to heal. Without the torment of the origin energy, they could recover very quickly with their bodies as magical beasts. At this moment, a figure appeared from outer space. He flew over in a hurry from afar. He was a white-robed, middle-aged man. He possessed a graceful bearing, but his face was rather evil. "Holy Emperor of the Humans, you've finally come out. I had thought you were going to hide for quite some time," said Ye Shenyan with a deep voice. Her voice was extremely cold and contained slivers of heavy, killing intent. The middle-aged man was the Path Lord of Carnal Desires. He had arrived long ago, but he had remained hidden in outer space. Earlier, the Path Lord had secretly peeped on Yashin time and time again. His eyes were filled with lust, which had already made Yashin unhappy. The Path Lord clasped his hands at Yashin before glancing past the heavenly enchantress. Afterward, he said to the barrier spirit, "I have offended you in the past, so please remove the origin energy from my body as well." Xiao Ling gently snorted and removed the origin energy from the Path Lord's body, rather unwillingly. Xiao Ling hated the three people who had bullied her brother. However, they needed to maintain their peak condition now that they faced the threat of the world of Forsaken Saints. The Path Lord became slightly excited when he sensed that the origin energy that had tormented him for several years had finally disappeared. He immediately ingested a high-level radiant spirit pill and began to heal. The heavenly enchantress coldly stared at the Path Lord and coldly said, "Path Lord of Carnal Desires, if this happens again, I definitely won't spare you." Everyone present looked over with the heavenly enchantress words. They all stared at her in shock. No one had thought that she would actually threaten a holy emperor. Chapter 1305. The heavenly enchantress showed no fear. She coldly stared at the Path Lord and emotionlessly said, "You don't have the final say on whether my way of the Zither can pose a threat to you. We'll know once we try." The heavenly enchantress had already placed her Zither before her chest. She gently plucked the strings with her slender, white fingers. Clearly, she was prepared to fight the Path Lord. The Path Lord's gaze suddenly sharpened. Two beams of light shot out from his eyes as he stared at the heavenly enchantress in a shocking manner. The evilness on his face became even greater as he sneered. You want to fight me? However, I'll make it clear first. If you lose, you'll become my 91st wife. Are you willing? The heavenly enchantress' face sank. Killing intent immediately filled her eyes. But before she could say anything, the Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall flew out of the crowd and coldly said to the Path Lord, "What a shameless human, Saint Emperor. You've embarrassed your human race. Path Lord of carnal desires, since you're so confident, I'll fight with you. If I lose, you can do whatever you want with me, but if you lose, I'll take your life." With that, Yadrium began to glow with blue light. An extremely terrifying power of water radiated from her, causing the surrounding space to violently tremble. The energy in the surroundings became violent. At the same time, a tremendous presence radiated from Yadrium, causing the surroundings to tremble. It engulfed the Path Lord without any fear. The Path Lord of carnal desires immediately sank. The tremendous pressure caused his clothes to stick tightly to his body. His expression darkened at that moment. He never thought that the Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall would actually step forward at a time like this. Moreover, he never thought that the Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall would actually be so powerful. This had completely exceeded his expectations. The three Saint Emperors from the Beast God continent became rather stern as well. They all sternly stared at the Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall. Although they had not clashed with Yadrium, they could sense just how powerful she was from her presence alone. Even Kaiser was not confident he could defeat her. Of the four supreme experts of ancient times, 3 of them have already died. Only the goddess of the sea race is still alive. The Hall Master of Poseidon must have received Poseidon's legacy, which is why she can become so powerful. She even knows the shocking secret techniques that Poseidon personally passed down to her. Her battle prowess cannot be underestimated. I can't become her enemy. Kaiser and Lankiros both wanted to fight. Their fear for Yadrium had already surpassed their fear for the heavenly enchantress. This was because they both thought that it was extremely likely that there was an Origin Realm expert who had surpassed the Holy Emperor behind Yadrium. Her strength was not something that regular Holy Emperor could compare to. The Pathlord's face was extremely sunken. He really wanted to take the heavenly enchantress under his wing so that she could serve him every day. He really did not want to let go of such a beautiful woman. Although the heavenly enchantress soul attacks were very powerful, the Pathlord was confident he could deal with them. However, he had no confidence in dealing with Yadrium at all. For a moment, the Pathlord was stuck between a rock and a hard place. If he advanced, it was extremely likely that he would end up fighting Yadrium. But if he retreated, he would feel very embarrassed as a mighty holy emperor. If I were to completely sever all my emotions and desires, I wouldn't need to fear the Sea Deity Hall Master at all. The Pathlord was filled with resentment. He had an extremely strong feeling that if he completely severed his emotions and desires, he would definitely be reborn and become an Origin Realm expert. However, he still could not overcome the last few obstacles. "Humph, you detestable bastard. If you dare to bully Big Brother's friend again, Xiaoling definitely won't spare you. She'll beat you to a pulp." Xiaoling swung her fist and viciously said to the Pathlord. She was extremely angry. She could sense a very familiar presence from the heavenly enchantress. The presence belonged to her big brother, so Xiaoling knew that the heavenly enchantress had a special relationship with her big brother. As a result, she was very protective of the heavenly enchantress. The Pathlord's face immediately changed when he heard Xiaoling's words. He only felt fear towards the Hall Master of Poseidon, but he felt fear towards Xiaoling from the bottom of his heart. He had experienced Xiaoling's power very well. Although she seemed like an innocent girl, the power she possessed was extremely terrifying. She could kill an expert like the Holy Emperor with a wave of her hand. At the same time, the Pathlord knew that even if he severed all his emotions and reached a certain level of comprehension, he would not be Xiaoling's opponent. This was because he would only become a receival expert at most after reaching a certain level of comprehension, while Xiaoling had already reached returnance. The experts of the humans, magical beasts, 100 races, and sea race all paid attention. Yadrium, the path lord of carnal desires, and the heavenly enchantress had become the focus of attention. There were also quite a few people among the experts of the 100 races and sea race who paid attention to Xiaoling. The barrier spirit of Mercenary City was actually an origin realm expert, which surprised and shocked many people. Just as the Path Lord was stuck between a rock and a hard place, a terrifying pulse of energy suddenly appeared in the distance. Even though it was several 100,000 kilometers away from Mercenary City, the 2,000 Holy Emperor experts gathered there could clearly sense it. The terrifying pressure from afar shocked all of them. No one paid any more attention to Yadrium and the Path Lord. They all looked into the distance and sternly stared in that direction. What's going on there? Why is there such a shocking pulse of energy? Even the mysteries of the world have been affected. They become rather disorderly. Have the people from the world of Forsaken Saints found another exit and are using another tunnel to enter our Tian Yuan continent? That's extremely likely. This is no small matter. Let's go and check the situation immediately. All the experts of the Holy Emperor discussed among themselves. They quickly constructed space gates and left. Very soon, half of the people had left, leaving behind around 1,000 Holy Emperor experts of the 4 races. They closely observed the situation in the tunnel. The Path Lord of Carnal Desires also used this opportunity to escape. He was the first to hurry over, followed by the 3 Holy Emperor experts, the Hall Master of the Poseidon Hall, and the other Holy Emperor experts. They all hurried in the direction of the terrifying pulse of energy. Flame City, where the Flame Mercenaries were stationed, had already sunk into darkness. Just a moment ago, the sun had been shining brightly, but a thick, dark cloud had drifted over from somewhere recently. It enveloped the entire region, blocking out the sunlight and causing the entire world to darken. Chapter 1306. Not only did the sudden change in weather alarm everyone in Flame City, but also alarmed everyone in the region enveloped by the dark clouds. The dark clouds had arrived far too quickly and were filled with an extremely vast pulse of energy, forming a terrifying pressure that made everyone suffocate. Everything seemed far too abnormal. Yu, Bai Lian, Bai Hai, and the other saint rulers all stood outside the city lord's estate. They all stared at the sky in surprise. The dark clouds were strange, so they had no idea what was happening. Fairy Haoyue currently sat in a secret room in the silver-white bright Moon Divine Hall. Suddenly, her eyes snapped open and she stared up in interest. Although she was hidden in the Divine Hall, her gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the various obstructions and see what was happening outside. This is a heavenly tribulation. Heavenly tribulations usually only appear in the saints' world and rarely appear in lower worlds. Has something impressive appeared in this world? Fairy Ho murmured to herself as the light in her eyes flickered. Bai Hai stared at the rapidly spinning vortex in the center of the dark clouds for a while before saying to Yu and Bai Lian, "Something's very wrong there. I'll go take a look first. Protect yourselves well." With that, Bai Hai flew over by himself. "Be careful, great-grandfather," Bai Lian called out from behind. Her voice was filled with concern. She stared at the huge vortex in the center of the dark clouds for a while before seeming to sense that something was off. She said to Yu, "Sister Yu, these dark clouds are far too strange. I'm afraid that something will happen to great-grandfather, so you better take me with you. I still have the flaming jadeite brother gave me. It can unleash an attack from the Holy Emperor at great perfection. It'll be very useful at crucial moments." Yu nodded. She grabbed Bai Lian's waist and followed behind Bai Hai. Bai Lian was not a Heaven Saint Master right now, so she was unable to fly. As a result, she needed Yu's help. At this moment, there was a flash of silver-white light. The bright Moon Divine Hall flew out of the City Lord's estate and blocked Yu and Bai Lian's path. "My disciples, you can't go over. Stay here. These are not ordinary dark clouds, but a heavenly tribulation. Once you're sucked into the tribulation lightning, Even the Holy Emperor will probably die. Fairy Haoyue's voice rang out from the divine hall. Yu Yu and Bai Lian did not know what a heavenly tribulation was, but they immediately paled in fright when they heard Fairy Haoyue's words. They said in a panic, "Master, great-grandfather Bai Hai has already flown over. Hurry up and call him back. We can't let anything happen to great-grandfather Bai Hai." A band of light completely condensed from moonlight flew out of the divine hall. It moved with unbelievable speed, catching up to Bai Hai in a single instance. It wrapped around Bai Hai's waist and pulled him back. Bai Hai knew that this was Fairy Haoyue's actions, so he did not resist. He allowed the band of light to pull him back. Just when he wanted to ask about his doubts, Fairy Haoyue's voice rang out from the divine hall. "None of you are allowed to approach the center of the tribulation lightning, or you'll definitely die, even if you possess the strength of the Holy Emperor." If someone else had said that, they definitely would have scoffed. No one would believe that a strange cloud could actually kill a Holy Emperor. However, the person who had said that was Fairy Haoyue. No matter how exaggerated it sounded, they had no choice but to believe it. After hearing Fairy Haoyue's words, Bai Hai's expression changed. Bai Hai's face immediately changed. A sliver of fear appeared in his eyes as he stared at the tribulation lightning. At this moment, the space several dozen kilometers away began to pulse violently. Space gates rapidly ripped open and large groups of Holy Emperor experts walked out. There was no lack of Holy Emperor experts among them. The large group of experts who had hurried over from Mercenary City arrived at the same time. However, as soon as they arrived, they quickly flew toward the tungsten alloy mine. In the end, they stopped 10 kilometers away from the vortex at the center of the dark cloud. They all sternly stared at the rapidly spinning vortex. They did not dare to act recklessly before they understood the situation. Strange. Just what has happened here? Why has such a large, dark cloud suddenly appeared? The dark cloud is strange. It doesn't seem like a tunnel to the world of forsaken saints. The energy hidden within the dark cloud is far too great. My strength has already reached the 7th heavenly layer of the Holy Emperors, but I still feel my heart skip a beat. Many of the Holy Emperor experts who had hurried over from Mercenary City gathered together and discussed the strange, dark cloud. A few bolder Holy Emperor experts had already begun making their way toward the vortex. The bright moon divine hall flew over from afar. It shone with a layer of pure moonlight. Fairy Haoyue's cold voice boomed out from the divine hall. "This is a heavenly tribulation. It's extremely rare here. The area below the vortex is within the range of the heavenly tribulation. Once you step in, the heavenly tribulation will lock onto you. Even if there is a Holy Emperor among you, death is certain. You'll only end up with your souls destroyed in the end. That's all I have to say. Take care." After warning everyone, Fairy Haoyue controlled the bright moon divine hall to hover in another direction, 20 kilometers away from the range of the heavenly tribulation. A heavenly tribulation? What's that? All the experts from the Holy Emperor were doubtful. They had lived for several thousand years and had heard many strange stories. Some of them even had a clear understanding of the matters of ancient times, but they had never heard of the heavenly tribulation that Fairy Haoyue had mentioned. Even the 10 protector clans with long histories were the same. They were extremely unfamiliar with the term because the ancient records in their clans did not contain any records of the heavenly tribulation. Fairy Haoyue, may I ask what the heavenly tribulation is? Why has it appeared? What does it signify? And how do you know it's a heavenly tribulation? A great elder of a protector clan asked calmly. He treated Fairy Haoyue as an equal. After all, Fairy Haoyue was only a soul now, so the threat she posed to them was nowhere near as great as a living Holy Emperor. Yadrium, the 3 Holy Emperors, and the Path Lord of Carnal Desires all stared at the Divine Hall. The Divine Hall had been forged from the distant moon, so it was extremely rare and precious. Even Holy Emperors might not possess it because they were just too far away from the moon. At the same time, space gates could not be constructed in outer space, so they could only fly to the moon. Fairy Haoyue did not say anything else. Whether it was the Holy Emperor present or the 5 Holy Emperor present, she did not pay any attention to them. She had personally come with the divine hall because she wanted to see just what had caused the heavenly tribulation. Heavens, what am I seeing? There's actually a city completely forged from tungsten alloy. That's tungsten alloy. Just by weight, it's much more valuable than purple coins. Just how much tungsten alloy was used to construct such a large city? A holy emperor from overseas discovered the city in the distance and immediately sighed in amazement. His eyes shone. A few other holy emperors from overseas immediately looked over with that. Their eyes immediately widened when they saw that. It's unbelievable. It really is a city completely forged from tungsten alloy. As long as you possess a city like that, you'll definitely become the wealthiest and noblest person on the Tianyuan continent. Am I seeing things? There are no formations or barriers in the city. There's not a single holy emperor. It seems to have been taken over by an ordinary mercenary group. Another holy emperor from overseas sighed in amazement. His eyes burned with desire. Although money was nothing to holy emperors, it was still enough to tempt many holy emperors when the wealth reached an unbelievable level. They wanted to take it for themselves. The other holy emperors from the Tianyuan continent all looked at the two of them like they were idiots. A kind-hearted holy emperor arrived beside the two of them and said softly, "Brothers, I'd advise you to give up on Flame City. Don't even look at it for too long, or I can guarantee that you'll regret it. It's something that even the 10 protector clans don't dare to touch." The two holy emperors from overseas immediately shrunk their necks when they heard that. They quickly looked away and dismissed their thoughts. Even the other holy emperors from overseas acted the same. How could they covet something that even the 10 protector clans did not dare to touch?